Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Dear colleagues, we will now proceed with our agenda item 10D on the progress report on the implementation of the action plans for the second cycle of periodic reporting in the other regions. The relevant document for this item is document 45.com-10D. This document presents the progress over the past 2 years on follow-up activities and implementation of regional action plans for the second cycle for periodic reporting for Asia Pacific, Section 1, Latin America and the Caribbean, Section 2, and Europe and North America, Section 3. As you will remember, in line with the decision 18X.com3 and Annex 2 of the document 18X.com-3, this agenda item will be adopted without debate. I will therefore invite the relevant chiefs of the regional units of the World Heritage Center to present their sections. And I would like to therefore first give the floor to Ms. Himali Shuli Gorong, Chief of the Asia Pacific Unit of the World Heritage Center, to present the first section of the document. You may have the floor.
A pleasant good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, distinguished members of the committee. I have the pleasure to present the implementation of sub-regional action plans in the Asia-Pacific region resulting from the second cycle of periodic reporting, the Pacific Action Plan and the SWAN Action Plan for Asia. The Pacific Action Plan, initially created in 2009, underwent revisions in 2011 and 2015. Meanwhile, the SWAN Action Plan for Asia, adopted in December 2011, identified priorities for the entire region of Asia, along with 21 sub-regional issues, and remained a guiding strategic plan until the adoption of the third cycle action plan under item 10 of this present session. The sub-regional action plans emphasized Region 1 priorities, such as the development of management plans, disaster risk reduction, and enhanced regional cooperation. Additionally, they recognized shared priorities such as community involvement and gap analysis studies. More than 10 years after the adoption of these action plans, it is clear that they have guided so many initiatives in Asia and the Pacific that most activities concerning World Heritage in the region can, in one way or another, be linked back to the sub-regional action plans. To take stock of the progress accomplished and of today's needs, a review workshop of the Pacific Action Plan was organized in November 2021 by the UNESCO office in Apia in partnership with IUCN Oceania, also involving the UNESCO World Heritage Center. The outcomes of the meeting fed into the development of the Regional Framework Action Plan for Asia and the Pacific that we will be discussing later today under item 10A. The implementation of the SWAN Action Plan for Asia progressed steadily since 2012, and over the last 2 years, many successful activities have been carried out, largely thanks to extra budgetary funding mobilized in line with the priorities identified through the periodic reporting exercise, both at UNESCO headquarters and in the field through our UNESCO field offices. Efforts to strengthen capacities and enhance expertise have notably led to the review and improvement of existing management tools, fostering risk preparedness. For example, a new international advisory committee for World Heritage properties was established in Uzbekistan in 2021, following successful models previously implemented in the region in Angkor and Lumbini. Over the last 2 years, sub-regional and national workshops were conducted to enhance the capacities of heritage experts, including in Bangladesh, Cambodia, Kazakhstan, the Lao PDR, Tajikistan, Thailand, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam, and notably played a pivotal role in empowering experts to design and conduct necessary impact assessments. Operational projects conceived as a response to the action plans have significantly contributed to conservation and community involvement, such as the UNESCO Japan Funds and Trust projects for the cultural landscape and archaeological remains of the Bamiyan Valley in Afghanistan, for the safeguarding of the Bayon Temple of Angkor Thom, Cambodia, and also for Lumbini, the birthplace of Lord Buddha, Nepal, which have consistently and sustainably reinforced national capacity for conservation and community involvement for heritage management. Similarly, the projects supported by the funds and trust made available by the Republic of Korea and Japan have supported the Silk Road's serial transnational World Heritage nomination efforts and served as a valuable platform for state parties to collaborate institutionally, promoting international solidarity and cooperation for better understanding and safeguarding of heritage corridors and cultural landscapes in this sub-region. This also supported the action plan's goal of increasing regional cooperation, which notably resulted in the successful new inscription of Silk Road's Zarafstan-Karakum corridor, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan on the World Heritage List a few days ago. When the committee members inscribed the second property, this was the second property associated with the heritage of the Silk Roads on the World Heritage List. Overall, the implementation of action plans in the Asia-Pacific region has led to substantial progress with heritage conservation, community engagement, and disaster risk reduction, and supported ongoing efforts to strengthen capacities and foster regional cooperation for the preservation of a shared cultural heritage. It would take far too long to list all the activities in the region that result from the implementation of this action plan, even just those organized over the last 2 years. But I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate UNESCO World Heritage Center's gratitude to the government of China, Japan, the Netherlands, and the Republic of Korea for their contributions towards supporting follow-up activities to the second cycle of periodic reporting in the region. As you know, the third cycle of periodic reporting, initiated in October 2020, has concluded in the Asia and the Pacific region, and its outcomes will continue to promote dialogue, collaboration, and community involvement, which we will have the opportunity to present later today under item 10A. Draft Decision 45-10D.1 can be found on page 5 of the English and French versions of the document. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Shukran.
Afwan. I would like now to invite and give the floor to Mr. Mario Rose, Chief of the Latin America and the Caribbean Unit of the World Heritage Center, who will introduce the second section of the document.
Gracias, señor presidente. Señor presidente, sin repetir los elementos que ya están en el documento, solo quisiera decir que una parte importante del periodo cubierto por el presente informe estuvo marcada por la ejecución de la última fase de los planes de acción resultantes del segundo ciclo y por la implementación simultánea del tercer ciclo del informe periódico. Ha sido entonces un periodo muy intenso para nuestros equipos y, por supuesto, para los Estados parte de la región. Con respecto a las actividades llevadas a cabo durante el periodo en cuestión, me parece importante subrayar sobre todo que se implementaron gracias a un importante esfuerzo de recaudación de fondos y a la solidaridad de numerosos donantes o patrocinadores, mencionados también, por supuesto, en el proyecto de decisión, en particular gobiernos, organizaciones financieras internacionales y centros de categoría 2. Y los centros de categoría 2 donaron tanto económicamente que operativamente. Otro aspecto importante a destacar es que las actividades implementadas conciernen todas las subregiones, como pueden averiguar, por supuesto, en el documento. Nunca hemos olvidado la especificidad de cada una de las subregiones y países que conforman América Latina y Caribe. En particular, nunca hemos olvidado las necesidades específicas de los estados insulares del Caribe, a las que hemos dedicado numerosas actividades. Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Eso es todo. Les recuerdo que el proyecto de decisión 45.10D2 se encuentra a la página 8 en inglés y 9 en francés. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to Ms. Berta Di San Cristobal, Chief of the Europe and North America Unit of the World Heritage Center, who will introduce the third section of the document.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Dans le cadre du deuxième cycle des rapports périodiques, la région Europe et Amérique du Nord présente la particularité d'avoir élaboré 2 rapports et 2 plans d'action distincts. En effet, le rapport du deuxième cycle de rapports périodiques pour l'Amérique du Nord a été adopté en 2014 lors de la 38e session du comité, alors que celui pour l'Europe l'a été l'année suivante, en 2015, en même temps que les plans d'action pour chacune des sous-régions. Dans le cas de l'Amérique du Nord, le plan d'action a été préparé par les points focaux nationaux pour la mise en œuvre de la Convention, du Canada et des États-Unis. Le Comité du patrimoine mondial a approuvé le plan d'action du deuxième cycle pour la sous-région selon 5 domaines de résultats, à savoir la mise à jour des listes indicatives, la mise en œuvre de stratégies d'information et de sensibilisation du public à propos du patrimoine mondial, le développement de stratégies pour renforcer la communication et la coopération entre les gestionnaires des sites du patrimoine mondial à travers toute la sous-région, l'octroi d'assistance technique aux biens du patrimoine mondial en dehors de la sous-région et l'intégration du patrimoine mondial au domaine existant de la coopération sous-régionale. Le comité avait également demandé aux États parties d'Amérique du Nord de présenter un rapport d'avancement sur la mise en œuvre de ce plan d'action. Après la soumission du premier rapport d'avancement sur la mise en œuvre du plan d'action du deuxième cycle pour la sous-région en 2016, aucun rapport d'avancement demandé par le comité n'a été soumis par les États parties d'Amérique du Nord. Quant à l'Europe, le plan d'action du deuxième cycle, le dénommé plan d'action d'Helsinki, a été préparé conjointement par les points focaux d'Europe, les organisations consultatives et le Centre du patrimoine mondial. Il avait été conçu comme un plan d'action cadre comportant des objectifs régionaux quantitatifs afin d'en faciliter l'appropriation ainsi que l'intégration dans les stratégies nationales, sous-régionales et régionales. Il comportait 3 objectifs clés qui sont les suivants: l'identification et la protection de la valeur universelle exceptionnelle, la gestion efficace des biens du patrimoine mondial et la sensibilisation à la Convention. Ces objectifs clés primordiaux incluaient des domaines prioritaires correspondant à des objectifs spécifiques, eux-mêmes subdivisés en 34 actions spécifiques. Les points focaux et autres autorités compétentes étaient invités à décider lesquelles de ces actions étaient les plus appropriées dans leurs pays respectifs et à s'approprier le plan d'action. Une enquête de suivi du plan d'action d'Helsinki fut menée en 2016, mais, comme dans le cas de l'Amérique du Nord, il n'y a pas eu de suivi véritable de la mise en œuvre de ces plans, ni par les États parties, ni par le secrétariat. Cela est très probablement dû au manque de ressources, tant au niveau des États qu'au niveau du Centre de patrimoine mondial, mais aussi, cela peut aussi refléter un faible sentiment d'appropriation et d'engagement à l'égard du plan lui-même, un point sur lequel nous sommes engagés à réfléchir pour construire le nouveau plan d'action différemment. Comme il n'y a pas eu de suivi systématique de ces plans d'action, l'idée est d'utiliser les questionnaires que la région vient de remplir pour le 3e cycle pour tenter de produire une analyse succincte de la mise en œuvre des plans d'action précédents qui puissent éclairer le futur plan d'action. J'aimerais mentionner également que certains des objectifs que s'étaient fixés ces plans d'action, notamment pour l'Europe, demeuraient partiellement accomplis au début du 3e cycle en 2022. Par exemple, seuls 40% des biens du patrimoine mondial, dans la région Europe et Amérique du Nord, bien sûr, avaient partagé leur plan de gestion avec le Centre du patrimoine mondial. Concernant les déclarations rétrospectives de valeur universelle exceptionnelle, aucune ne manquait pour l'Amérique du Nord au début du cycle, du 3e cycle, mais 29 manquaient encore en Europe, dont le comité vient d'en approuver 9. En ce qui concerne les cartes, l'exercice parallèle et complémentaire au rapport périodique, le projet dénommé Inventaire rétrospectif, a révélé au début du cycle, donc à la fin du 2e cycle, qu'environ la moitié des cartes de la région étaient concernées par ce processus de clarification cartographique et géographique. Parmi les clarifications demandées, à nouveau, environ la moitié ont été reçues, et de celles-ci, seuls 14% ont été jugées satisfaisantes et sont désormais approuvées par le comité. Bien entendu, l'analyse des autres clarifications et les échanges avec les États parties se poursuivent. En dépit des moyens très modestes alloués par le Fonds du patrimoine mondial à l'exercice de rapports périodiques dans la région Europe et Amérique du Nord, comme référence, juste rappeler que pour l'année 2022-2023, l'allocation était de $20 000 des États-Unis. En dépit de ces moyens, depuis la dernière session du comité en 2021, et grâce au soutien de différents partenaires, 2 outils ont pu néanmoins être développés dans le but de soutenir une gestion efficace des biens du patrimoine mondial, et ce, pas uniquement en Europe et Amérique du Nord. Je les mentionnerai brièvement, puisque beaucoup d'entre vous ont assisté aux événements parallèles lors de cette session, au cours desquels nous avons pu les présenter. Tout d'abord, le guide en ligne pour les projets d'énergie éolienne dans un contexte du patrimoine mondial, élaboré conjointement avec les organisations consultatives et grâce au soutien du gouvernement des Pays-Bas, et qui a été enrichi de cas d'études de la région. Ce guide a été développé afin de soutenir les États parties, les gestionnaires des sites et les autorités nationales dans la protection des biens du patrimoine mondial, dans le cadre de la transition vers les sources d'énergie renouvelables, mais aussi pour offrir au secteur de l'énergie éolienne une vue d'ensemble des concepts du patrimoine mondial et des exigences en matière de protection et de gestion. Le secrétariat se réjouit de l'opportunité que lui a offert ce projet pour commencer à développer un partenariat avec l'Agence internationale pour les énergies renouvelables, IRENA, de son acronyme en anglais, qu'il entend poursuivre notamment dans le domaine de l'énergie solaire. Le deuxième outil, aussi présenté dans le cadre d'un événement parallèle lors de cette session, c'est la plateforme des cartes en ligne du patrimoine mondial, le premier système d'information géographique en ligne pour des zones protégées par l'UNESCO, élaboré grâce au soutien du gouvernement de la Flandre, permettant d'améliorer et de rendre plus claires et accessibles les informations sur les délimitations des limites des zones protégées par la Convention du patrimoine mondial. Suite à l'appel aux États parties de la région Europe et Amérique du Nord en avril 2022, à partager sur une base volontaire les cartes géoréférencées des sites sur leur territoire, nous avons reçu les couches géoréférencées pour 61 des biens de la région. Comme pour le cas de l'inventaire rétrospectif que je mentionnais à l'instant, les efforts ne s'arrêtent pourtant pas là, et les États parties de l'Europe et d'Amérique du Nord, en tant que région pilote de ce projet, mais aussi les États parties des autres régions, sont vivement encouragés à continuer à partager ces données avec le secrétariat. Voici donc, membres du comité, les 2 initiatives sur lesquelles le secrétariat a concentré ses efforts depuis la dernière session du comité pour élaborer des outils de soutien à la réalisation des objectifs que les États parties se sont fixés eux-mêmes dans le cadre de leur plan d'action précédent. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. And now that we have heard about the 3 regions concerned, I will invite you to turn to our draft decision 45Com 10D.1. But before doing so, I'd like to ask the rapporteur if she has received any amendment on this draft decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received no amendment for this draft decision 45-10D.1.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments on this? Japan?
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the delegation of Japan and the country of the Asian Pacific region, we would like to fully support the draft decision and profoundly appreciate the excellent work organized by World Heritage Center, as well as the advisory bodies and the Category 2 centers. They well organized the third cycle of the periodic reporting, including holding the meetings or workshops with state parties, analyzing the large amount of data, and publishing the detailed and excellent report, even though under the pandemic circumstances. For the state party of Japan, not only the central government, sorry, my comment. I will return after it. So I have a mistake, sorry.
It's okay. Mexico?
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Nuestros países han concluido el tercer ciclo del informe periódico para América Latina y el Caribe, puntualmente coordinado por el Centro del Patrimonio Mundial, y queremos anexarnos plenamente a aprobar esta decisión del comité y, si nos permite, posteriormente volver a tomar la palabra. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I see no more comments, and I therefore declare that draft decision 45-10D.1 adopted. We now turn to draft decision 45-10D.2, but before doing so, I would like to ask the rapporteur if she has received any amendment regarding this draft decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No amendment is received for this draft decision.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments? I see none, and I therefore declare draft decision 45-10D.2 adopted. Last but not least, I now invite you to consider draft decision 45-10D.3, but before doing so, I'd like to ask the rapporteur if she has received any amendment regarding this draft decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No amendment is received for this draft decision.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments? I see none. Therefore, I declare draft decision 45-10D.3 adopted. Mexico? You would like to take the floor?
No, señor presidente, más adelante. Gracias.
All right. So now, dear colleagues, we'll proceed with our agenda item 10E on the progress report on the preparation of the third cycle of periodic reporting over the past 2 years, which contained in document 45.com-10E. As you will remember, in the line of decision 18x.com3 and Annex 2 on the document 18x.com-3, this agenda item will be adopted without debate. Allow me, dear colleagues, to now give the floor to Ms. Britta again, Chief of the Europe and the North America Unit of the World Heritage Center, and Mr. Valentino Ituar of the Policy and Statutory Meeting Unit of the World Heritage Center to present to us this report. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable members of the committee, the complete report on the third cycle of periodic reporting in the other regions can be found in document WHC/23/45com/10E. The report presents the overall conduct of the third cycle of periodic reporting, more specifically the overall activities conducted in preparation for the beginning of the exercise in the Europe and North America region. It also covers other activities carried out by the Secretariat in relation to the coordination and conduct of the third cycle of periodic reporting. As a reminder, the third cycle of periodic reporting was launched by Decision 41-10A in Krakow in 2017, where the committee decided to maintain the same order as for the previous cycle, starting with Arab states, Africa, Asia and the Pacific, Latin America and the Caribbean, and Europe and North America. Europe and North America is now the last region to undergo this statutory process under the Article 29 of the Convention. I would like thus to pass the mic to my colleague Beata de San Cristobal, head of the Europe and North America unit, to provide you with a brief overview of the progress of the exercise.
Thank you. The World Heritage Center initiated the periodic reporting exercise in the region, Europe and North America, on 21st September 2022. National focal points for the implementation of the Convention and World Heritage Site managers in the region were invited to complete Section 1 and Section 2 of the periodic reporting questionnaires, covering the implementation of the Convention at the national and property levels, respectively, by 31st July 2023. Subsequently, a kick-off meeting with the national focal points was organized online on 20th and 21st October 2022. This was an opportunity to take stock of the lessons learned from the second cycle and share experience related to the third cycle from those regions that had already completed the reporting phase, and Africa in particular. Key information was shared with just over 80 representatives of states parties from the region on the overall objective of the periodic reporting exercise, as well as on key dates of the third cycle. Participants were also introduced to the new features and themes in the questionnaire to be completed by said parties. The meeting included contributions from the three advisory bodies to the World Heritage Committee, ICOMOS, ICROM, and IUCN, as well, who had the opportunity to present the set of tools and resources developed jointly with UNESCO over the last few years, which said parties could rely on during the periodic reporting exercise and beyond. State parties from Europe and North America were able to leverage the experience of their predecessors and benefit from the valuable participation of two national focal points to the World Heritage Convention from Senegal and South Africa. Through the sharing of an overview of the challenge encountered and lessons learned during the process, African focal points provided valuable insights that allow others to enhance their understanding of their exercise. By the submission deadline of 31st July 2023, all state parties in the region have submitted Section 1 of the questionnaire, and only Section 2 of the questionnaire for 5 properties located in the same country have still not been received and therefore will not be considered in the analysis. The exercise involved all the 51 state parties in the region, which at the time of the reporting comprised 548 World Heritage properties. While this represents a very substantial sample from which to conduct in-depth and valid analysis, care will need to be taken to ensure that sub-regional realities are not diluted in conclusions or aspirations that are too general or abstract. It should be noted that reporting for 2 trans-regional properties had already been completed and submitted during the Asia-Pacific reporting period, since the state parties designated as coordinators of the periodic report for these 2 properties belong to this region, Asia-Pacific. The Secretariat would like to take this opportunity to warmly thank the 51 countries in the region for their considerable efforts in compiling such a substantial amount of information, and to assure you that the Secretariat will do everything in its power, making the most of the modest resources at its disposal to ensure that the report and the resulting regional action plan are up to the task. The Secretariat would also like to thank the Government of Ireland for its generous support, which will enable us to bring together all the focal points in the region at UNESCO headquarters in December for a working meeting to define and agree on the regional action plan. The final date of this meeting will be communicated to you very shortly. It is also thanks to the support of the governments of Ireland and Italy through their annual contribution to the UNESCO Regional Bureau for Science and Culture in Europe that the Southeast Europe sub-region will be able to benefit from more dedicated support to help it structure its contribution to the Regional Action Plan based on a preliminary analysis of its periodic reporting questionnaires at a workshop to be held on 24th and 25th October in Kotor, Montenegro. So there are months of intense work ahead of us, and I should also flag that contrary to the other regions, Europe and North America cannot rely on a Category 2 center to support this exercise, nor the Secretariat, nor the state parties. A team of experts covering cultural and natural heritage, as well as a statistician, are already analyzing the information compiled. They will also aim to ensure proper integration between this exercise and reactive monitoring as the two main monitoring mechanisms under the World Heritage Convention. The Secretariat hopes to be able to share a draft regional report and action plan ahead of the December meeting so that it can serve as a working basis and then be revised to reflect the input gathered from focal points. There will then be a short period for further consultation with the state parties so that they can solicit input from the site managers, and the two documents should be finalized between February and March next year for presentation to the upcoming 46th session of the World Heritage Committee. I would like to remind you that for this third cycle, Europe and North America are embarking on a joint exercise that presents both opportunities for synergies but also challenges. This is in response to one of the recommendations of the Report on Periodic Reporting Reflection 2015-2017 and launch of the third cycle, which was presented to the World Heritage Committee at its 41st session in 2017, namely the recommendation that Europe and North America region report in 1 year to avoid duplication of work and promote further regional cooperation. The approach proposed by the Secretariat to achieve the joint action plan has been designed so that, taking into account the means at its disposal, real opportunities for consultation are created, enabling the final document to be experienced as a meaningful roadmap for both the national authorities and the site managers, with a sense of divided responsibility but equal commitment. Of course, the challenge is particularly great for some of the state parties in the region with the largest number of World Heritage properties. The role of national focal points will therefore be particularly key for this region, unlike others where the number of listed properties has enabled a more direct engagement with the site managers themselves. To conclude, I would like to mention that contrary to the planned practice of annual monitoring of the implementation of the action plan drawn up during the second cycle, which proved to be of little avail, the Africa and Arab states region have opted for a midterm monitoring exercise, the results of which will be examined by the World Heritage Committee. If the Europe and North America region opted for a similar approach, this would lead to a midterm monitoring exercise of the next regional action plan in 2027, based on a 6-year action plan for 2024 to 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I will now invite you to examine and adopt draft decision 45 10E included in the document 10E. But before doing so, I'd like to ask the rapporteur if she has received any amendment on the draft decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received no amendment for the draft decision 45.com 10E.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments? I see none. I therefore declare draft decision 45 10E adopted. And for now, dear colleagues, I will invite you to deal with the reports of the result of the third cycle of the periodic reporting exercise. We will start with the report of the result of the third cycle of the periodic reporting exercise in Asia Pacific, which was due to be presented to the committee in 2022. The relevant information is enclosed in document 45.com-10A. Before we start, dear colleagues, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Valentino Itwar of the Policy and Statutory Meeting Unit at the World Heritage Center to say a few introductory words on the periodic reporting exercise. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, honorable members of the World Heritage Committee. The complete report on the result of the third cycle of periodic reporting exercise in the Asia and the Pacific can be found in document WHC/23/45.com/10A. Next slide, please. The third cycle of peer reporting was initiated by Decision 41 COM10A in 2017 as per in Krakow, Poland. By Decision 43 COM10B, the committee took note of the fact that the Asia and the Pacific is the first region to undertake the exercise exclusively online due to COVID-19 pandemic, and commend the Secretariat for adapting all scheduled activities, outreach strategies, and training content for the online delivery without changing the schedule of the exercise, and thank the public reporting national focal points and site managers in the Asia-Pacific for adapting to these new modalities. In this regard, the Secretariat has translated all the tools and guidelines in order to make it available for exercise online, only to the, notably with the translation of the handbook for site managers and the questionnaires on open request by state parties in the national language. Several national focal points have also proactively translated the questionnaire and handbook into the national language, notably in Thai, in Nepalese, and in Russian, to facilitate the exercise to the site managers. Prior to the exercise, an early information session was organized during the side event, the 43rd session of the World Heritage Committee in Baku in July 2019. A preparatory consultation meeting was organized between the World Trade Site managers and the advisory bodies, notably Chrome, ICOMOS, and IUCN, to identify the capacity building trainings based on the questionnaire contents. The reporting exercise itself took place from October 2020 to July 2021, and in total, 16 online capacity building training sessions were implemented to the National Focal Point Site managers. In addition to that, 2 online training sessions explaining the process of the exercise was conducted by the center towards to the National Focal Points, and also 2 other training sessions to the site managers. At the time of the start of the periodic reporting, all the member states, which was 44 states parties to the convention in the region, were invited to complete the questionnaire section 1 related to the implementation of the convention at country level, as well as 269 inscribed properties at the time of the launch of the exercise were invited to complete the individual questionnaire section 2, which concern the implementation of the World Heritage Convention at World Heritage level. The exercise was coordinated by the World Heritage Center in close collaboration with the advisory bodies, as well as involvement of the C2Cs in the Asia and the Pacific, namely the World Heritage Institute of Training and Research for the Asia and the Pacific region, WITRAP, located in China, the International Center on Space Technologies for National and Cultural Heritage, known as HIST in China also, located in China, the Center for Natural Heritage Management and Training for the Asia and the Pacific region, which is in Dehradun in India, and the Global Research and Training Center for Internationally Designated Areas located in the Republic of Korea. The UNESCO field office in the Asian and Pacific were also very actively involved to assist state parties in the process. Overall, the reporting phase in the region received a very positive feedback. Positive feedback from site managers, with many of them has indicated that the exercise was very helpful in better understanding the issues related to the sites. And the result, as you can see on the screen of submission for section 1, 42 out of 44 state parties have submitted the questionnaire at section 1, which is at state party level, achieving a percentage of 95.4% completion rate. And on section 2, 265 out of 269 World Heritage properties questionnaire were submitted, resulting in a percentage of 98.1%. The collected data was then statistically analyzed at the region and sub-regional levels by 4 regional international awarded experts, as well as 1 statistician. Based on the outcomes of the data were compiled, a preliminary list of priorities was established. The statistical result was then analyzed at scale of the region and sub-region as a whole. In March 2022, a 3-day sub-regional workshop was organized with the national focal points, the advisory bodies, and UNESCO field office, and awarded experts. During this workshop, the Secretariat presented the result of the exercise and also gathered different feedback from state parties. And also, it was an occasion to gather, to prepare to formulate action for the framework action plan. After this session, after this workshop, the action plan was consolidated further by the periodic reporting experts and the Water Center in order to more harmonizing action based on the feedbacks, and was subsequently shared with National Focal Point for additional adjustment, comments, and recommendation. Following this, the Water Center further refined the action plan to eliminate any duplication to ensure a concise set of actions that can be monitored in the future. The proposed framework action plan for the region that will be presented to you by my colleague, Mrs. Hemahim, Chief of the Asia and the Pacific Unit, has been prepared by the national focal point of the APA region, and it is the work and the contribution which was across all state parties. Mr. Chair, my colleague Hema Gurung will present to now the main outcomes and the propose of some of the action plans in the region.
Thank you, Valentino. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, distinguished members of the committee. The periodic reporting in the Asia and the Pacific region has yielded significant results. I would now like to present in more detail some of the main outcomes and outline the proposed regional framework action plan for the Asia and the Pacific region. Next slide, please. Several positive achievements have been highlighted in the periodic reporting exercise. 23 state parties have updated their national tentative list since 2012, and it has reached a total of 176 new sites in Asia Pacific. Since 2012, 25 states parties submitted 123 nomination dossiers for 99 properties. Out of these, 61 dossiers presented to the World Heritage Committee were inscribed on the World Heritage List, reflecting perceived benefits of enhanced heritage protection and prestige. The upstream process was used by only 9 state parties. However, state parties expressed their willingness to use this tool in the future. Next slide, please. Since the second cycle, cooperation and synergies with more other biodiversity-related and culture conventions, programs, and recommendations have been strengthened. These are increased cases of multi-designations with Ramsar sites, biosphere reserves, UNESCO global geoparks, and the elements inscribed on the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage. At the same time, the periodic reporting exercise identified a need to reinforce inter-ministerial cooperation as well as coordination between the focal points of different conventions, programs, and designation at national and site levels. The periodic reporting results also suggested that there's a room for greater use of the 2011 UNESCO recommendation on the historic urban landscape in some subregions. Next slide, please. Since the second cycle, 18 state parties have updated their national legislations for heritage protection, although the relevance of legislation for World Heritage needs improvement across the region. Legal frameworks for World Heritage are mostly considered adequate and enforced, although the Pacific region reported lower assessments. Next slide. Most properties have a statement of outstanding universal value. Some properties reported the need to revise statements of OUV to reflect broader issues such as climate change and indigenous peoples' cultures, especially in the Pacific sub-region. While over 90% of properties reported that key attributes of their OUV are well preserved, climate change is having a notable impact, especially on many properties in the Pacific. Next slide, please. Most responses reflected positive perspective, with 60% being positive factors and 40% being negative. The effectiveness of management and institutional frameworks stands out as a key positive cross-cutting factor, which is almost 45%, together with social culture, use of heritage, service infrastructure, building and development. Next slide, please. Local conditions affecting physical fabric is most cited as a negative factor for cultural properties, while climate change, severe weather events is ranked first for natural and mixed properties and second for cultural properties. These are followed by sudden ecological, geological events and pollution. Next slide, please. Many states parties rely on national government funding for maintenance. While 35% of properties reported having an adequate budget for effective management, only 56% reported that their budget could be further improved. Some properties in the Pacific and Central Asia received substantial international assistance subsidies for both human and financial resources. Next slide, please. Capacity building is indicated across the board as a medium to high need, with some areas attracting especially high interest, such as climate change and digital technology, which was, of course, taken into account when developing the Regional Framework Action Plan. State parties use the World Heritage Capacity Building Strategy appropriately for purposes ranging from national level implementation, fundraising, to support specific programs, to awareness raising. However, the Pacific countries do not report using it for any of the listed purposes. Responses to one of the most pertinent questions, whether state parties have a national strategy for capacity building, which was one of the expectations of the capacity building strategy, are not encouraging and will need to represent an important strategic area for progress in the coming years. Next slide, please. Concerning monitoring of the World Heritage properties, there has been a 10% improvement from the second cycle, with 68% of properties now reporting that they have a comprehensive integrated monitoring program. However, monitoring is often not based on key monitoring indicators, which should be identified to conserve the OUV. Furthermore, monitoring needs to involve local communities and indigenous peoples, which needs to be improved across the region. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to present the proposed Regional Framework Action Plan for Asia and the Pacific. This action plan is the result of in-depth consultation with the national focal points, site managers, the periodic reporting experts, and the advisory bodies. Together, they created a robust draft of an action plan during a meeting in March of last year, which was consolidated and shared with all stakeholders to collect their feedbacks. It was then finalized into the document presented to the committee for this session, taking into account the outcomes of the exercise and reflecting them into the strategic document that will guide the implementation of World Heritage-related activities in the region for the next 6 or more years. Next slide, please. The Regional Framework Action Plan is based on the 5 strategic objectives of the World Heritage Conventions, the 5 Cs: credibility, conservation, capacity building, communication, and communities. This proposed Regional Framework Action Plan for Asia and the Pacific is set up to be the key guiding document for World Heritage in the region for the next 6 years at least, and comprises 15 expected results. I repeat, 50 expected results, with a set of actions with clear approaches and monitoring indicators to accompany states parties throughout its implementation. National focal points are invited, along with their relevant national authorities, to appropriate the action plan and decide which of the 35 activities and actions are most relevant to them and what level of priority can be given to each action. The action plan also proposes means of implementation of each action to help guide the key actors identified as they plan and implement activities for World Heritage. The objectives of the plan can only be achieved through the partnership of global, regional, and local partners, actors, and stakeholders. Such an approach, focused on stakeholders at all levels, especially emphasizes the key role of both local communities and global stakeholders. It is enshrined in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As such, the involvement of youth and women, with a strong emphasis on intergenerational exchange, is a continuous theme of this action plan. The action plan also places a role of UNESCO field offices and of Category 2 centers under the auspices of UNESCO at the core of the implementation of the action plan, and you will see that they appear in many different actions. It is our firm belief that the role of these actors is key in achieving the goals and actions outlined by the national focal points in the Framework Action Plan. I will now very briefly present the main expected results of the action plan following this structure by strategic objectives of the committee. Next slide, please. Strategic Objective 1 is to strengthen the representativity and credibility of the World Heritage List in the region. Action under Strategic Objective 1 on credibility include updating national inventories in line with the thematic studies and gap analysis, updating tentative lists in accordance with the operational guidelines and the guidance on developing and revising World Heritage tentative lists as shown on the screen, and preparing high-quality nomination dossiers, including by requesting upstream support and other forms of early preparatory assistance. Next slide, please. Strategic Objective 2 is to improve conservation, effective management, and promotion of World Heritage. Actions under Strategic Objective 2 on conservation include ensuring adequate and sustainable funding to meet the needs of World Heritage, including by developing and reinforcing innovative and sustainable funding mechanisms dedicated to heritage conservation and management, strengthening coordination and cooperation between stakeholders, ministries, agencies, and focal points of different conventions, improving conservation through the effective governance of World Heritage properties, such as through promoting a better understanding of the property's OUV, attributes, and associated values for all stakeholders, and carrying out the necessary boundary clarifications for properties and their buffer zones, strengthening conservation and management practices in line with sustainable development objectives, and ensuring the legal provisions of the World Heritage Conservation are adequate and fully implemented. Next slide, please. Strategic Objective 3 is to develop effective capacity building measures for the understanding and implementation of the World Heritage Convention and related instruments. Action under Strategic Objective 3 on capacity building include developing fully operational capacity building strategies for World Heritage, providing training across the region and stakeholders, and here we would like to emphasize the key role to be played by the advisory bodies and the Category 2 centers, including such as HIST and WETRAP in China, WIPIC in Republic of Korea, and the Wildlife Institute in India. Next slide, please. Strategic Objective 4 is to increase public awareness, involvement, and support for World Heritage through communication. Actions under Strategic Objective 4 in communication include enhancing heritage education, communication, and awareness raising, and promoting World Heritage and effective participation of communities, I repeat, communities, including youth and women. Next slide, please. Strategic Objective 5 is to strengthen community and stakeholder engagement for effective management of World Heritage properties. Under Strategic Objective 5 and communities include promoting effective participation of local and indigenous communities in cooperation with other stakeholders, and ensuring that properties' contribution to economic growth, such as through reinforcing the sustainability of heritage revenue, notably from tourism, while ensuring equitable benefit sharing. Next slide, please. Following the dissemination of the report and the Regional Framework Action Plan, state parties are invited to appropriate their action plan and decide on the actions that would be most relevant for implementation at different levels, sub-regional, national, and at the site level. We encourage states parties in Asia and the Pacific region to organize national and/or sub-regional workshops to share broadly the Regional Framework Action Plan among relevant stakeholders. The key actors of World Heritage in the region are then invited to identify and integrate priority actions into national and site-level plans and to secure the necessary human and financial resources to implement the actions identified. The World Heritage Center stands ready to assist states party in such efforts and will also monitor the follow-up on the implementation of the action plan with state parties and other relevant stakeholders. As with other regions, the progress achieved in implementing the action plan will be assessed through a short, straightforward mid-cycle assessment scheduled for 2027. Next slide, please. The World Heritage Center would like to extend a deep gratitude to all states parties in the region, the World Heritage focal points and site managers for their active participation in the implementation of this exercise. The individual and invaluable inputs provided insight into the implementation of the World Heritage Convention, as well as information about the factors affecting the properties and the challenges faced. Sincere appreciations to this Category 2 centers, including WeTrap, Wildlife Institute of India, and HIST, for their continued active support and commitment throughout the implementation of the third cycle of Asia-Pacific region. It is also extended to the advisory bodies and experts, as well as the UNESCO field offices in the region and the UNESCO Institute of Statistics. Last but not least, the Secretariat would like to reiterate its sincere thanks to the Republic of Korea for the support provided via its Funds in Trust Agreement at UNESCO for the implementation of periodic reporting capacity building activities in the region of Asia and the Pacific. Next slide, please. For more information on the next steps for the implementation of the Framework Regional Action Plan, you are all invited to our side event that will take place this evening from 6:30 p.m. onwards in Al Asha Oasis Room. Next slide, please. The draft decision of this item can be found on page 118 of the English version and page 132 of the French version of the document. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for the informative presentations. I would like to see if there are any comments from the room regarding the presentations we heard about. Japan.
Thank you very much again, Chairperson. I could not wait for the presentation of 10A so long time. Anyway, on behalf of the delegation of Japan, and as a country of the Asia-Pacific region, we would fully support the draft decision and really appreciate the excellent works organized by the World Heritage Center, as well as the advisory bodies and Category 2 centers. They well organized the third cycle of the periodic reporting, including holding the meetings or workshops with the state parties, analyzing a large amount of data, and publishing the detailed and excellent report, even though under the pandemic circumstances. For the state party of Japan, not only the central government, but also a lot of local authorities, the local communities, and each level of stakeholders are involved in daily conservation works of heritages. And this periodic reporting was the good opportunity to be aware and to re-examine our conservation activities. We also welcome that the periodic report clarifies the common challenges among our region, such as shortage of the human and budgetary resources, transboundary cooperations, and climate changes. We would also like to cooperate the next regional action plan to be implemented with all stakeholders. Finally, we would conclude by saying that we would also like to express our appreciation for the leadership of Ms. Himachari Kulung, the chef of ASEAN and the Pacific Unit at this time. شكرا جزيلا.
عفوا جزيلا. الهند.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving India the floor. At the outset, India would also like to thank the Chief of Unit Asia and Pacific for her very comprehensive presentation and compliment the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies for the strategic exercise of this third cycle of periodic reporting for the region carried out between September 2020 to July 2021 in accordance with the Decision 41-COM-10A. India appreciates the necessity of the self-reporting access process led by the states parties themselves to provide an assessment of the application of the World Heritage Convention. Being one of the focal points from India, I would like to inform the committee that several ministries of the Government of India, namely the Ministries of Culture, Environment, Forest and Climate Change, External Affairs, Railways, Urban Development, Education, Tourism, etc., various state departments of archaeology, municipal authorities and private religious trusts participated in this exercise. Archaeological Survey of India and the Wildlife Institute of India, which is also a UNESCO Category 2 center, were the two focal organizations for the cultural and natural properties respectively that led the entire process of periodic reporting for India. If I may say so, for India, the challenges of participating in the third cycle of periodic reporting were manifold. They were not merely from the point of view of the limitations caused by the pandemic, but that India had to deal with the periodic reporting of a large number of 38 World Heritage properties, coordinate with 38 site managers, different ministries, organizations, municipal authorities, etc., that made that effort quite challenging, but in the end fruitful and rewarding. The Section 1 of the periodic reporting forms enumerated India's overall position on the conservation, protection and management of India's heritage, its various laws, rules and guidelines that guide the protection of India's cultural and natural heritage at national, regional and local levels. It also gave India's position on simultaneous aligning with multiple other conventions and recommendations. India highlighted the robust interaction between the World Heritage focal points and focal points of other conventions. The Section 1 also highlighted India's keen interest to pursue and update the tentative list and review it from time to time, which we are doing. India highlighted the continuing need to engage in dialogue with all relevant stakeholders in the process related to the preparation of the tentative list documents and nomination dossiers. We also articulated our commitment to align itself with the UNESCO's SDGs and gender-balanced contribution and participation. The Section 2 of the periodic reporting forms filled individually by the sites managers of the individual properties was also an opportunity to credibly reflect on the state of conservation and various management challenges. I'm happy to inform that our site managers managed to provide the desired information on time. Filling up these exhaustive forms was not only with the objective of informing the World Heritage Center, but was also an opportunity for internal introspection. This enabled India to compile a huge amount of data that now we are examining and reflecting upon. It gives us an opportunity to address all the major issues and challenges that are being faced by our World Heritage properties, and we are committed to resolve them within a manageable time frame. Last, Mr. Chair, I would like to inform that it was also an opportunity to interact and exchange ideas amongst professionals, communities involved in the process. The ASI and Wildlife Institute of India initiated several training exercises for enhancing the capacities for site managers and associated communities to participate in this exercise. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Thailand.
Thank you, Chair. My delegation would like to express our appreciation for the work done by the Secretariat and the excellent presentation earlier. Capacity building is an important and indispensable part of the conservation and preservation of the World Heritage Sites, especially an implementation phase, as capacity building can enhance opportunities for conservation and better management of sites. Over the years, we have seen the result of these efforts with new sites being included, on the list in different regions. In this regard, Thailand commends the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies and Category 2 centers for their efforts to implement the World Heritage Capacity Building Strategy and its supporting role in organizing the International Conference on the Management and Protection of the World Cultural and Natural Heritage in April 2022, which was held online. The aims of the conference were to increase knowledge and understanding of the World Heritage Convention, with a focus on the process for inscription of the properties on the World Heritage List, developing related documents and effective management plan. It also aimed at promoting international cooperation of ASEAN community and international organizations in the implementation of the World Heritage Convention. Thailand, therefore, would like to once again express our sincere appreciation to the World Heritage Center, especially the Chief of the Asia-Pacific Unit and the advisory bodies. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no more interventions from the committee members. I therefore will pass the floor to Ikram.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Los organismos consultivos contribuyeron con gusto en el tercer ciclo de informes periódicos en Asia y el Pacífico y desean agradecer al Centro de Patrimonio Mundial por esta oportunidad. Los organismos consultivos participaron y siguieron con gran interés y compromiso las reuniones organizadas con los puntos focales y los gestores de las regiones. El proceso de presentación de informes periódicos es muy importante porque nos brinda la oportunidad, como comunidad del patrimonio mundial, de poder recopilar datos y actualizaciones sobre el gran número de bienes a escala regional y global. También nos brinda una oportunidad fundamental de estar en contacto directo con los gestores de los sitios y con los puntos focales nacionales, ofreciendo un espacio para debatir cuestiones apremiantes y analizar los retos a los que se enfrentan nuestros sitios. Los organismos consultivos desean subrayar algunos resultados e implicaciones importantes del informe. Muchos de los bienes del patrimonio mundial reportan una falta de recursos importante para la conservación y gestión. El informe también resalta la necesidad de una mayor preparación ante riesgos. El informe indica que las evaluaciones de impacto patrimonial no son un requerimiento estatutario en numerosos sistemas legales y los organismos consultivos, por ello, alientan la incorporación de la nueva guía y caja de herramientas para evaluaciones de impactos en el contexto del patrimonio mundial en los sistemas nacionales. De manera similar, un programa de desarrollo de capacidades para la instrumentación de la caja de herramientas de Mejorando Nuestra Herencia 2.0 sería una respuesta apropiada para hacer frente a otro de los resultados del informe, que muestra que existe aún un margen importante para mejorar los procesos de monitoreo y evaluación para muchos bienes inscritos en la lista de patrimonio mundial en la región. Los planes de acción que se elaboran desde las regiones proporcionan una orientación clara sobre las prioridades de cada región y cómo responder a estas cuestiones. Esperamos seguir colaborando, proporcionando asistencia técnica y diseñando nuestras actividades de seguimiento en respuesta a los planes de acción establecidos. También sabemos que estos planes de acción de seguimiento son fundamentales para que los centros de categoría 2 diseñen y lleven a cabo las actividades de seguimiento de sus respectivos planes de trabajo. Tal y como se destacó en el punto 6, relativo al desarrollo de capacidades, los organismos consultivos consideran que las conclusiones y los planes de acción derivados del tercer ciclo del proceso de presentación de informes periódicos deben constituir la base para el desarrollo de la nueva estrategia de desarrollo de capacidades del patrimonio mundial. De manera adicional, los resultados del tercer ciclo pueden ser muy útiles en la creación de estrategias de desarrollo de capacidades que se consideren necesarias para cada región. De hecho, consideramos que el siguiente ciclo de informes periódicos debería incorporar el desarrollo de estrategias de desarrollo de capacidades en su proceso. Los organismos consultivos están plenamente comprometidos a apoyar y contribuir en las acciones concretas de desarrollo de capacidades identificadas en los planes de acción y adaptados a las necesidades y especificidades de cada región. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And also would like to So I'll pass the floor to the Secretariat of the World Heritage Center.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I just wanted to share with the distinguished members of the committee some additional remarks on this exercise, which has been a very important exercise. Actually, you know, the third cycle of periodic reporting is really an important moment where with all the contributions of all the site managers, all the contributions of all the decision makers involved in the in issues related to conservation, to management, and to policy of the of World Heritage issues are really important. And I think this exercise has brought us a number of lessons. First of all, I think, like Ikram has said clearly, there is a need to continue capacity building. This is important, and this exercise has also brought in line the fact that, you know, World Heritage Site continue to be faced with a number of challenges that needs to be addressed. There could be some external factors, like there could also be some internal factors that will require to continue use some of the tools that the advisory bodies have put in place, like the tools for conducting heritage impact assessment, and the reason why it's important that this continue. One positive lesson of this exercise is that many state parties, I mean, almost all the sites in Asia and Pacific have a statement of OUV. And I think this is really encouraging. And it shows already that that this will help continue to improve all aspects related to maintaining the outstanding universal value of all the properties. And I think since periodic reporting exercise are also a way of exchanging experience and among regions, I think this effort that has been done to make sure that all the sites have a statement of OUV, it's also something that can be shared with other regions in terms of lesson learned. I just wanted to share this with you, and this has been possible because of not only the coordination of the Secretariat, but also the contribution of all the advisory bodies in this exercise during this past year. So it's just that it's just a word of gratitude and to all the state parties, to all the site managers who have contributed to this exercise, who have really made sure that the team reflected in this report in such a positive way. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much, dear Director. So we have two requests from the floor. Zambia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know whether I should go ahead with my comment, especially that, you know, the Director has preempted what I wanted to say. Maybe I can still, since I've been given the opportunity, let me just say one or two words. Having taken part in one of the periodic reporting exercises in the past, just to add to what the Director has indicated, there is need to strengthen the cooperation between the different regions so that there is exchange of knowledge. I'm saying so because when you try to compare the different periodic reporting cycles, at first, like the second periodic reporting, there were few, that is individuals who are involved in that periodic reporting cycle. And when you look at the third reporting and the reporting cycle, there were a number of people who are involved, and you find that even the results which were achieved were better than the previous periodic reporting cycle. Meaning that if you are to have this, this exchange of that is information, there will be a lot of that is experiences which will be learned from the different regions. I submit, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Zambia. So we have two requests from the floor, Republic of Korea and China. We'll start with the Republic of Korea.
Dear Mr. Chairperson, Your Excellency, I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak on the floor. On behalf of the Republic of Korea, I would like to express our gratitude to the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies for their dedication and efforts for successfully implementing the third cycle of the periodic reporting exercise in Asia and the Pacific region. It is our great pleasure that the Republic of Korea is supporting the activities of capacity building in World Heritage Sites in Asia and the Pacific region through the UNESCO Korea Funding Trust project. We hope for the Regional Framework Action Plan to be appropriately implemented in Asia and the Pacific region through active participation from members of state parties, site managers, Category 2 centers, experts, and local communities. We will also continuously support in the implementation of the action plan in coordination with the newly established International Center for the Interpretation and Presentation of World Heritage Sites, WIPIC, located in the Republic of Korea. In addition, we hope that the Republic of Korea Funding Trust can also contribute to enhance and establish transboundary properties in Asia and the Pacific region. In all, I would like to extend our appreciation again to the World Heritage Center, the advisory bodies, and all the state parties for all their continuous efforts in the World Heritage Convention and for the result of the third cycle of periodic reporting exercise in Asia and the Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. China.
Thank you, Chair, for giving China's floor. China extends its appreciation to the large amount of work carried out by the World Heritage Center and advisory bodies with regard to the third cycle of the periodical reporting exercise in Asia and the Pacific. In the challenging context of the global COVID-19 pandemic, the Center took immediate action to adjust to a difficult situation and carried out this exercise successfully. The thorough and quality report presented in front of us provides an in-depth analysis with a series of outcomes, both on national and on property levels, and the key areas of improvement identified in this process deserve special attention of state parties in the next stage of implementation of the Convention. Through emphasizing important indexes as community development, climate change, capacity building, and synergies with other conventions, etc., the concept of people orientation and sustainable development embedded in the World Heritage protection find their way into the minds and actions of the people working for heritage. China actively participated in this third reporting exercise by providing national and property level reports on time, with engagement of competent authorities, competent national authorities, national focal points, site managers, as well as two Category 2 institutes, with National Commission for UNESCO playing a coordinating role. It is our hope that the third cycle of reporting exercise could serve as a cornerstone for future cooperation of states parties and World Heritage Sites in this region. We stand ready to cooperate with various stakeholders in protecting the treasures of our planet till 2030 and beyond. Thank you, shukran.
Afwan, I see no more comments, and I therefore invite you, dear colleagues, to examine and adopt draft decision 45-10A, included in the document 10A, but before doing so, I'd like to ask the rapporteur if she has received any amendment on the draft decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received no amendment for the draft decision 45-10A.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments? I see none. Therefore, I declare draft decision 45-10A adopted. So, dear colleagues, as we just heard from the Secretariat, the small island developing states are priority group for UNESCO region. And as you know, Tuvalu became the 195th state party to the convention last May, meaning that the World Heritage Convention now enjoys nearly universal ratification. We are delighted to have a video message from Mr. Mialufa from the Ministry of Local Government and Agriculture of Tuvalu, who wishes to underline the importance of his country to have ratified the convention. This is the first step by Tuvalu to mark its commitment to protect its heritage.
Mr. Chairperson, thank you for giving me this opportunity to say a few words regarding Tuvalu's ratification of the World Heritage Convention as the 195th state party. I also thank you and others for your warm words of congratulations. This is a major milestone for us. Tuvalu and other Pacific Atoll Island nations are at the forefront of the climate crisis, where our nations are critically challenged by rising sea levels. We face the complete inundation of our lands by the end of the century, and this loss will be catastrophic. Amid this existential threat to our people, culture, and heritage, we have taken the important step of ratifying the UNESCO World Heritage Convention. We have joined the convention to mark our commitment to protecting our culture and heritage, but also to seek global recognition and call on the international community for support. This is the first step in our effort to seek World Heritage Site status, because we believe that Tuvalu holds unique and outstanding value to the global community. As one of the world's few true atoll island nations, Tuvalu has played a key role in the cultural development of the Pacific region, which continues to be one of the most underrepresented on the World Heritage list. In our fight to tackle climate change and preserve Tuvalu's nationhood, we are seeking international recognition of the uniqueness of what and who we are as a culture and as a people, and global commitment to protect and preserve it. It is a historic moment, and I count on the support of all countries, stakeholders, and friends who believe in protecting the cultural and natural heritage of humanity for future generations. Thank you. Tuvalu Motetu.
Thank you for this message passed over to the Secretariat. And now, dear colleagues, we will now proceed with the reports on the results of the third cycle of the periodic reporting exercise in Latin America and the Caribbean. The relevant information is enclosed in document 45.com-10b. Before we start, dear colleagues, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Valentino of the World Heritage of the Policy and Statutory Meeting Unit at the World Heritage Center to say a few introductory words on the periodic reporting exercise. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable members of the committee, the complete report on the result of the third cycle of periodic reporting in the Latin America and the Caribbean can be found in document WHC/23/45com/10b. Next slide, please. You can find on the screen the reporting cycles for the Latin America and the Caribbean, and with the dates when the report and the action plan was presented to the committee. So, next slide, please. With regard to the third cycle, as per decision 41.10a, the committee launched the third cycle of reporting and per decision 43.10b, the committee further underscored the Secretariat roles in ensuring a holistic approach across region by providing overall coordination, guidance, tools, and analysis, as well as facilitating a state party-driven approach of the exercise. By decision 44.10d, the committee confirmed the start of the third cycle of periodic reporting in the Latin America and the Caribbean region. Latin America and the Caribbean region is the second region after Asia and the Pacific to undertake the periodic reporting exercise exclusively online. The World Trade Center has adapted the schedule, activities, outreach strategies, and training content for the online delivery without changing the schedule of the exercise. In this regard, the Secretariat has also translated the tools and guidance that have been provided for the site cycle reporting to the site managers and national focal points, notably the handbook for site managers, the video tutorials, the key terms, and the frequently asked questions into Spanish, in order to facilitate also the work of the site managers and national focal points. The handbook for site managers was also translated in Portuguese for Spanish, Portuguese-speaking countries, Lusophone countries. The reporting phase of the exercise involved the completion of the 9 questionnaire section 1, which is completion at the next slide, please, on the state party level, and the section 2 of the questionnaire, which concerned the implementation of the convention at the state, World Heritage Properties level. The public report started in September 2021, and in early December 2022, a kickoff meeting was organized with the national focal points of the region to introduce the exercise and the questionnaire. 3 individual meetings were also arranged for national focal points upon request, and 7 other meetings were organized for site managers meeting, also requesting special assistance. A help desk support also has been set in place to assist site managers throughout the entire process. The center has noted approximately 600 technical assistance provided to site managers. At the launch of the exercise for the Latin America and the Caribbean, 33 state parties to the convention were invited to complete the questionnaire on section 1, as well as 147 World Heritage properties were invited to complete the questionnaire at section 2. The advisory bodies, so ICROM, ICOMOS, and ICN, were one of the key actors in the process, notably in providing targeted technical assistance and capacity building trainings. In addition, 2 Category 2 centers, notably the Regional World Heritage Institute in Zacatecas, located in Mexico, and the Regional Heritage Management Training Center, Lucio Costa in Brazil, was also involved in the process. All the UNESCO field office in the Latin America will also participate in assisting the site managers in the completion of the questionnaire. Next slide, please. Overall, the reporting phase of the region received a very positive feedback as site managers indicate mostly that the exercise has improved understanding of the issues related with World Heritage properties, and also has helped them to make an introspective of the site, and this is very particularly true for site managers who has never experienced the statutory process and who was recently appointed. As you can see it on the screen, the result of the submission of the questionnaire was quite high, and we have noted, we have received 100% of submission, 33 countries over 33, for section 1, and only 2 sites were not submitted for section 2. Next slide, please. The collected data was then statistically analyzed at the region and sub-regional level by 4 regional international experts, and based on the outcome of the compared data, a preliminary list of priorities was established. In February 2022, a consultation meeting with all the national World Heritage site managers in the region was held and national focal point to present the exercise outcome and gather feedback and recommendation for the preparation of a regional action plan. A 2-day final workshop was also organized to present the outcomes, and the recommendation formulated by the site managers to the action plan was very useful to organize the next meeting with the national focal point in order to draft the regional action plan. My colleague Mauro Rossi, Chief Unit of the Latin American and the Caribbean Unit, will continue the presentation on the main outcomes and will propose action plan to the World Heritage Committee. Thank you.
Previous slide, please. Okay, thank you. Señor presidente, distinguidos miembros del comité, los resultados del tercer ciclo de informe periódico muestran, en general, que los Estados parte de América Latina y el Caribe y sus puntos focales, nacionales, designados y administradores de sitios, tienen un buen conocimiento de la Convención. Sus marcos regulatorios y políticas nacionales promueven la conservación del patrimonio al tiempo que integran algunos de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Los Estados partes y los administradores de sitio han logrado avances significativos en la implementación de la Convención del Patrimonio Mundial desde el segundo siglo, incluida la inscripción de nuevos bienes en la lista de Patrimonio Mundial, en particular en lo que respecta al mayor número de sitios mixtos. El desarrollo de unos sitios transfronterizos en serie es otro gran logro. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Como se puede ver en los gráficos en la pantalla, los Estados partes han informado masivamente sobre la posibilidad y necesidad de hacer cumplir el marco legal, es decir, legislación o regulaciones, para la conservación y protección del patrimonio cultural y o natural. Las regulaciones nacionales sobre patrimonio identifican el patrimonio, pero se necesita más para regular realmente la conservación del patrimonio. En 20 países se considera que el patrimonio tiene una función en la vida de las comunidades. En el 76% de los países el patrimonio está de alguna manera integrado en políticas más amplias a nivel nacional, pero con claras deficiencias. La principal fuente de financiación para los costos de funcionamiento y mantenimiento proviene de los gobiernos nacionales. El 41% de los bienes reportaron financiación inadecuada. El 100% de los gobiernos nacionales de Centroamérica y México y América del Sur son las principales fuentes de financiación para la protección del patrimonio. Pero esta cifra cae al 50% en el Caribe, donde las fuentes de financiación se diversifican con la financiación multilateral, internacional, los bancos internacionales, la financiación bilateral, junto con fuentes de otras convenciones internacionales. Los administradores de sitio en el 75% de las propiedades informan que los atributos clave de sus valores universales excepcionales están bien conservados. En términos de necesidades de gestión, los recursos humanos siguen siendo un factor clave a abordar en la región. Mientras que los pequeños estados insulares en desarrollo de la subregión del Caribe centran sus necesidades en asegurar la financiación y la gestión de visitantes, América del Sur, América Central y México también identificaron programas educativos como una necesidad de gestión muy importante. Next slide, please. En esta diapositiva sobre las sinergias pueden ver la respuesta en el cuestionario justamente sobre la sinergia con las principales convenciones culturales. Las más seguidas son la Convención para la Salvaguardia del Patrimonio Cultural Inmaterial de 2003 y la Convención sobre la Protección y Promoción de la Diversidad de las Expresiones Culturales de 2005. La Convención para la Protección del Patrimonio Cultural Subacuático de 2001 tiene una mayor aceptación e implementación en el Caribe y en América Central y México. Además, la región tiene un claro compromiso de participar en otros acuerdos ambientales multilaterales, especialmente el Convenio sobre la Diversidad Biológica, la Convención sobre el Comercio Internacional de Especies Amenazadas de Flora y Fauna Silvestres, CITES, y la Convención Internacional de Protección Fitosanitaria. En cuanto a la participación en otros programas, 35 bienes están catalogados también como reserva de biosfera y 22 están incluidos en la Convención de Ramsar de las zonas húmedas. La recomendación sobre el paisaje urbano histórico, HUL, de 2011 está utilizada por 80% de los estados parte en la subregión de América del Sur, 62.5% en el Caribe y solo por 28.6% en América Central y México. Next slide, please. I will shift to English. Capacity building is a priority area as reflected in the action plan. The responses to the questionnaire focus on risk preparedness and climate change adaptation, as well as on impact assessment tools and capacity for the conservation and management of heritage. Regarding the existing national capacity building strategies, nearly half of the region doesn't have any national strategy and promotes capacity building on an ad hoc basis. The priority identified in these areas are, first of all, risk preparedness and disaster risk management. That appears as the first priority, with 25 countries identifying it for the cultural heritage and 20 for the natural heritage. It is closely followed by the conservation and management of heritage sites, which was considered by 23 state parties in the case of cultural heritage and 19 countries concerning natural heritage. Important priority emerged are also conservation and management of heritage sites and strengthening resilience to natural hazard and climate change adaptation and mitigation. The Caribbean seats include in their capacity building priorities governance, legislative, institutional, and financial framework and mechanism. Next slide, please. In the graphics on the screen, you may see how the state parties reported on the different strategies developed to encourage and support World Heritage property, to manage and develop visitation and tourism sustainability in particular. A significant number of countries encourage and support sustainable management and development of visitation and tourism at World Heritage property, but this support could be strengthened further. More than 70% of the state parties have implemented strategies to raise awareness about World Heritage. However, more than half reported that strategies are being implemented with some deficiencies. From 1217 to 1221, almost 815 million people, national and internationally, visited World Heritage property in Latin America and the Caribbean. For 1 year to the next, the number of visitors increased between 2% and 14%. Locally driven sustainable tourism initiatives were reported by 57% of participants, and benefits from tourism are shared with the community in 63% of the cases. A strategy to manage visitors, tourism activity, and its derived impacts on World Heritage properties reported by 76 site managers, 46%. Almost all property in the region reported a formal framework for community participation. Next slide, please. So based on this exercise, an action plan from now to 29 was drafted. This action plan was, of course, developed on the basis of the outcomes of the contribution gathered through the questionnaire and from consultation with all stakeholders, state managers, national focal point, ABs, experts, and Category 2 centers. It was also defined based on a meeting with site manager which was held online in February 33, following by another, also in February, a meeting with all the national focal points. For the entire LAC region, this framework, this action plan, was intended for the entire LAC region, but it is adaptable for any sub-region, that they will be able to identify its specific particular priority. We have 5 strategic objectives, 15 expected results, 30 actions and activities, and it is also, like the action plan already presented by my colleague of the Asian Pacific region, structured around the 5 C's of the strategy of the World Heritage. Comprehensive and inclusive, of course, are also the main categories which have been taken into account in the definition of this action plan. Next slide, please. I'm going to introduce now quickly some expected results by strategic objective. Strategic objective 1 is strengthen the representativity and credibility of Latin American, Caribbean diverse heritage in the World Heritage List. For the implementation of this strategic objective, for its attainment, we have foreseen an expected result 1, which is tentative list updated and enriched, aiming at improving the representativeness of diverse Latin American Caribbean heritage on the UNESCO World Heritage List. An expected result 1-2, reinforce tentative list as instrument for cooperation. And then an expected result 1-3, national inventories updated to reflect the diversity of heritage following gaps analysis and regional cooperation. Next slide, please. Strategic objective 2 will be reinforce effective management for the conservation and promotion of world heritage in the region. Under this strategic objective, we have the expected result 2-1, which is conservation of world heritage property is improved through effective management, protection, and adequate monitoring in line with the sustainable development. Expected result 2.2 will be strengthen legal framework and inclusion of world heritage into larger policies. Expected result 2.3, promote resilience at UNESCO World Heritage Site, and 2.4, enhance adequate and sustainable funding to meet the needs of world heritage at all levels. Next slide, please. Strategic objective 3 is develop and implement capacity building for innovative approaches to conservation, management, and promotion of world heritage. Under this strategic objective, we have expected result 3.1, capacities to enhance sustainable conservation and effective management are developed. And then expected result 3.2, promote exchange program for shared knowledge. Next slide, please. Strategic objective 4 is enhance better use of heritage education, communication, and awareness-raising formulas for the protection of world heritage. Under this strategic objective, to attain this strategic objective, we have foreseen 3 expected results. Expected result 4.1, heritage education, communication, awareness to be enhanced. Expected result 4.2, improve world heritage property presentation, and then 4.3, develop and useful research for the conservation of property. Next slide, please. Strategic objective 5 will be reinforced community participation and stakeholders engagement for effective management of world heritage property. To attain this objective, we have foreseen 3 expected results, which are 5.1, improve the role of involvement of local community and indigenous peoples and stakeholders in the conservation and management of UNESCO World Heritage properties. Then expected result 5.2, strengthen sustainable tourism in accordance with communities' human rights. And then 5.3, integrate stakeholders for an effective governance and management of sites. Next slide, please. In conclusion, we have, I think, many problems in the region. I prefer the use of the term problem to the terms challenge. They are almost synonymous. But there are also many solutions. We have, based on the implementation of the second cycle, and on the basis of what we have exchanged and shared during this third cycle exercise, we have the legitimate, reasonable hope that the region will progress again in the next years as much as it, in a spectacular way, it progressed in the last years. Next slide, please. The next steps will be, of course, to shift to the operational stage after the consultation, after the definition of the objectives and the results, etc. The action plan will become action. So first of all, we work at its dissemination. We are going to organize starting a meeting in December with all the necessary, all the concerned stakeholders. And we will follow up the recommendation integration into the national sites level plans. We will, of course, continue to work, as we did with some success, sometimes, to resource mobilization, because, of course, we will need resources, both in kind and financial, to improve this plan. And then we will, of course, follow up, and as for our colleagues of the Asian Pacific region, of course, we will have a mid-cycle assessment to finalize in 2027. Next slide, please. Before concluding, I would like just to shortly, quickly, thank the state parties for their commitment, for their exceptional work, and also the advisory bodies, of course, of the World Heritage Committee, the regional experts, independent experts, which coming from all the sub-regions which work with us for the implementation of this difficult and complex exercise. Of course, the Category 2 centers, the one in Zacatecas and the one in Rio, which really contributed to the exercise, but we hope now they will contribute to the implementation of the action plan, and of course the colleagues of the field offices of UNESCO, which helped us a lot during this exercise. Next slide, please. So the the draft decision is, distinguished delegates, on page 120 of the English version of the document and page 130 of the French version of the document, WHC 2345-10B. Thank you, Mr. President. That's all.
Thank you very much for this informative presentation. I would like to ask if there are any comment from the floor regarding this subject. Mexico.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Nuestros países concluyeron el tercer ciclo del informe periódico, puntualmente coordinado por el Centro del Patrimonio Mundial a través de la Unidad de Políticas y Reuniones Estatutarias y el permanente y paciente apoyo del Coordinador de Informes Periódicos, además de la siempre fundamental asesoría y generoso acompañamiento de la Unidad para América Latina y el Caribe. En estas titánicas empresas comunes, el factor humano es fundamental a la par del institucional para llevar a buen puerto proyectos amplios como este, que involucró a infinidad de personas en toda la región, entre los gestores de 147 bienes inscritos como los puntos focales nacionales. El documento final emanado del trabajo de los 33 países latinoamericanos y del Caribe, como lo presentó Mauro Rossi, incluye ya el Plan de Acción para América Latina y el Caribe 2023-2029, cuyas prioridades están alineadas con la declaración adoptada durante la Conferencia Mundial de la UNESCO sobre Políticas Culturales y Desarrollo Sostenible, Mondiacul 2022, además de las reflexiones emanadas de la Conferencia Internacional los 50 próximos años, el futuro del patrimonio mundial en tiempos de desafíos. Entre los objetivos que México destaca del plan están la elaboración e implementación de planes de preparación de riesgos de catástrofes, así como los planes de mitigación y adaptación al cambio climático, conforme a la estrategia del patrimonio mundial para la reducción de riesgo de catástrofes y la promoción del patrimonio mundial como instrumento eficaz de adaptación al cambio climático y solución alternativa durable en materia de renovación y de integración de los conocimientos tradicionales. Y otro tema primordial que México viene impulsando intensamente desde 2013, la alternancia, la implementación conjunta de la Convención del Patrimonio Mundial con otras convenciones culturales y recomendaciones de la UNESCO, como la de 2011 sobre el paisaje urbano histórico, con el propósito de facilitar una conservación más eficaz de los bienes del patrimonio mundial, además de las buenas prácticas para su gestión. Gracias por el invaluable acompañamiento también de los organismos consultivos, cuya participación ha sido relevante en nuestros trabajos. A nombre de mi compañera de la Comisión de Áreas Naturales Protegidas y del mío, finalmente, señor presidente, agradeceríamos se pudiera dar voz también a otros entrañables países observadores de nuestra región, como Cuba y Jamaica, para que nos hablen sobre esta excepcional y fructífera experiencia. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Argentina.
Agradecemos, muchísimas gracias, señor presidente. Agradecemos a la Secretaría, al señor Mauro Rossi, la presentación de este exhaustivo y completo informe sobre los resultados del tercer ciclo del ejercicio de informes periódicos en América Latina y Caribe, en particular la coordinación efectuada que se ha hecho entre las regiones. Destacamos asimismo los esfuerzos que han hecho los Estados partes de la región de América Latina y el Caribe en la cumplimentación y presentación de las secciones 1 y el significativo nivel de compromiso de los gestores del sitio en la presentación de cada sección 2 de los cuestionarios del informe periódico. La Argentina ha cumplimentado en tiempo y forma los cuestionarios del tercer ciclo del informe periódico, convocando para ello a todas las partes interesadas, en particular a los organismos nacionales del Comité Argentino de Patrimonio Mundial y también a los responsables de la gestión de los 11 sitios inscritos en la lista de Patrimonio Mundial. El informe presentado recoge satisfactoriamente los resultados del tercer ciclo en América Latina y Caribe y el plan de acción resultante, Chapter 6, Draft Action Plan 2023-2029, for the Latin American and Caribbean Region, que resulta una herramienta fundamental para la mejor implementación de la Convención en nuestra región. Las prioridades y los objetivos estratégicos presentados en el documento constituyen una excelente oportunidad para fomentar la cooperación regional. En este sentido, se alienta la adaptación subregional del plan de acción y el trabajo colaborativo de los Estados partes, el Centro de Patrimonio Mundial, los organismos consultivos y el Centro Categoría 2, Lucio Costa, para la formulación de un plan de acción 2023-2029 para América del Sur. Muchísimas gracias por este informe.
Thank you very much, St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would like to thank Mr. Rossi for his report. And we see that the third periodic reporting cycle of Latin America and the Caribbean was successfully completed thanks to the commitment of state parties, national focal points, World Heritage site managers, experts, national commissions, and NGOs. St. Vincent and the Grenadines commends the efforts undertaken in this exercise, which provides a rich array of responses to the current situation in the region, and maybe for the first time, if I am not mistaken, with sub-regionally disaggregated data that reflects the specificities of the Caribbean as a small island developing states, Central America and Mexico, and South America. We thank the Center for the online meeting made available to the region for this purpose in cooperation with the field offices. The support of the field offices and Category 2 centers is crucial. Although a total of 76% of countries respond that heritage is in some way integrated into broader policies at the national level, there are some gaps in their implementation, providing clear evidence that capacity building is needed in the Latin America and Caribbean region at all levels to assist decision makers, social sectors, communities to adopt appropriate policies and raise awareness about the protection and conservation of heritage. We encourage the Center to continue capacity development on risk preparedness and climate change adaptation, impact assessment tools and capacities, as well as training education strategy to strengthen capacity development in the field of conservation, protection, presentation, and management of heritage. St. Vincent and the Grenadines welcomes the third cycle Regional Framework Action Plan 2023-2029 proposed by the Secretariat with the 5 strategic objectives based on the 5 Cs. The prioritization of the 38 actions must be determined in light of the environmental, cultural, social, and economic context and adapted to the specific needs of the region and sub-regions. With the inscription of the sites of Argentina, Guatemala, and Suriname during this session, Latin America and Caribbean region now has 150 World Heritage properties distributed across 28 states parties in the region. 5 states parties do not yet have a site. Therefore, St. Vincent and the Grenadines attaches a great importance on the upstream process to accelerate the nomination process. We look forward to working with the Center to finalize the tentative list update and with the advisory bodies to move forward with the preparation of nomination files with a view to ensuring a broader representative World Heritage list. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. So if there are no more comments or interventions from committee members, I would like to... Indeed, you can. So I'll pass the floor to the Director of the Water Center.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I just also wanted to, again, maybe highlight a number of important information that you have in this exercise, in this periodic reporting. The first one has already been shared by the delegate of St. Vincent, is of course that this is the first time this results is being shown, you know, with a number of specificity concerning the different regions. I think that was one of the effort, and this effort was done thanks to all the meetings attended by all the site managers, but also the decision makers and others who are looking into policies. And really, I would like to thank them for having trust in the whole exercise that we conducted. Again, the report has highlighted one important thing is to continue reinforcing the representativity on the World Heritage List of the region. And this is very important because it's first on the fact that a number of state parties from the Caribbean do not yet have a site on the World Heritage List, but also it is important that the issue of updating the tentative list be supported. And this, if you remember, has been one of the priority highlighted after the celebration of the 50th anniversary. The second important point which came out of the region is the whole work around the contribution to of World Heritage to sustainable development, and also how sustainable tourism can be important in the promotion and also preservation of that, and how it contributes not only to the communities in general, but in particular to the indigenous communities, because this is also something which has been clearly highlighted in this exercise. The last comment I wanted to make is that, as you can see, also the issue of the need to continue capacity building has been highlighted. So I just wanted to go back to item 6, where you have requested us now to prepare the capacity building strategy, the new capacity building strategy, which of course will take stock and of the results of these two exercises, the one from Asia and the Pacific, but also the one from Latin America and the Caribbean, where it is important that the new strategy reflects the needs highlighted in this exercise, but also to support the action plans that you have in this report. So it's also an opportunity to call for members of the committee and state parties to the convention to support us to prepare this World Heritage capacity building strategy, because we are in need of funding to make it real. And so I'm taking this opportunity to call for support, because capacity building is important, as you have already again mentioned it, and we need it. Lastly, really, I'd like to thank also all the experts and the advisory bodies who have been involved in working with us during this exercise. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much, dear Director. So we have 2 requests from the floor, Cuba and Jamaica. So I would like to pass the floor to Cuba for a 2-minute statement.
Gracias, señor presidente. Siendo nuestra primera intervención, quiero agradecer al Reino de Arabia Saudita por su hospitalidad y a usted, señor presidente, por su efectiva conducción de esta sección del comité. Cuba desea subrayar la importancia de los informes periódicos como herramienta efectiva para la evaluación del estado de implementación de la Convención, la gestión de los bienes inscritos y los retos que nos acechan a futuro. En nuestra experiencia nacional, la culminación del tercer informe periódico fue un ejercicio participativo de profundas reflexiones con la presencia de diferentes actores sociales, particularmente las comunidades, y cuyos resultados son ya evidentes. Para la región, el plan de acción adoptado sobre la base de los resultados del informe deberá constituir una herramienta recurrente en la toma de decisiones y para continuar reforzando la cooperación internacional. Deseamos agradecer al Centro de Patrimonio Mundial y a los órganos consultivos en el desarrollo del informe, tanto desde el sistema informático de trabajo como en las acciones de capacitación a distancia. Para Cuba, el proceso de realización del ejercicio del informe periódico coincidió con la etapa final de la aprobación de la nueva Ley General de Protección al Patrimonio Cultural y al Patrimonio Natural, que representa un importante paso en la armonización del marco legislativo nacional con el conjunto de instrumentos normativos internacionales orientados a la protección del patrimonio cultural y natural. En este contexto, Cuba revisó la lista indicativa nacional que será presentada próximamente al Comité para su actualización. La coincidencia de ambos procesos nos permitió incorporar una visión holística e integral de la gestión del patrimonio cultural, reposicionando la dimensión social y económica de la cultura y el patrimonio cultural en tanto motores fundamentales para alcanzar el desarrollo sostenible. Esta voluntad compartida que se puso de manifiesto en el ejercicio del informe periódico regional quedó de igual modo refrendada en la declaración de los ministros de Cultura del Grupo de los 77 y China, reunidos en La Habana el pasado mes de mayo, en el marco del primer Congreso Internacional de Patrimonio Cultural, en el que tuvimos la oportunidad de contar con el director del Centro de Patrimonio Mundial y a quien le agradecemos su presencia. Una vez más, Cuba reafirma su compromiso con la UNESCO y con la implementación de la Convención de 1972 para la protección del patrimonio común. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Jamaica.
Thank you, Chair. Jamaica expresses its thanks and appreciation to the LAC unit of the Secretariat for the extensive work carried out in facilitating the third cycle of the periodic reporting for the LAC region. We were able to engage the process, albeit virtually, and determine the issues impacting Jamaica, the Caribbean, and the entire LAC region, and this was due to the wonderful support received during the process. In this process, however, we found that among the SIDS of the Caribbean, there is a submitted site for possible inscription every 2 years, with the last site prior to Suriname in this session being inscribed in 2017 in Antigua. This highlights for us the urgent need for capacity building, as was just said, in nomination development for the Caribbean, as well as a better understanding of UNESCO recommendations, such as the recommendations on the historic urban landscape and the protection and promotion of museums, collections. And we look forward to the Secretariat's plans in this direction. Jamaica also believes there is significant room for the countries of the region to work together in more effective ways. We experienced this with Mexico for underwater archaeology and really take this opportunity to thank our colleagues in Mexico for the help they provided for us. Finally, we are pleased with the development of the 6-year action plan and thank the Secretariat for putting our collective thoughts together on this. However, we know that though the LAC region all face similar issues, a sub-regional framework will still be needed for Caribbean SIDS. Issues such as updating tentative lists, management of site sustainable development, and climate change are all priorities for us. And we look forward to working together alongside the LAC unit to furthering the work on this in these areas. Again, we thank the LAC unit for the significant work done on this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no more comments, I invite you, dear colleagues, to examine and adopt draft decision 45Com 10B, included in document 10B. But before doing so, I'd like to ask the rapporteur if she has received any amendment on the draft decision proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received no amendment for the draft decision 45Com 10B.
Thank you very much. Also, there are no comments or objections. I therefore declare draft decision 45Com 10B adopted. Dear colleagues, we move now to item 14, devoted to the international assistance. To this end, I would like to invite you to pay attention to document 45.com-14. This information contained in the document spans over a 2-year period. This document will be introduced to the committee by the Deputy Director of the Walter Center. You may have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. The first part of the document, next slide please. The first part of the document is related to the international assistance requests within the purview of the World Heritage Committee, that is, requests more than $30,000. Please note that all requests under this amount are within the purview of the Chairperson of the World Heritage Committee. The list of the requests approved in 2020, 2021, and in 2022-2023 until 15 June 2023 can be found in the annex of document 45Com-14. Next, please. You now see on the screen a summary of the requests submitted to the committee for its decision. The funds available under the Conservation and Management Assistance budget as of 15 June 2023 amount to a little more than $543,000, so there are enough funds to approve all 6 requests if the committee decides to do so. Next, please. The first request comes from Côte d'Ivoire for the conservation of the Sudanese-style mosques, the request responds to the committee's recommendation made in 2021 at the time of inscription of the site. It is therefore recommended for approval. The amount recommended by the panel is a bit lower than the amount requested because the panel considered that the defrayment for the participants in the workshops should be reduced. Next, please. The second request is from Ghana for the preparation of a management plan for Asante traditional buildings. The site was inscribed in 1980 and has never had a conservation and management plan. This request, therefore, represents a clear and urgent priority. It is therefore recommended for approval with a small adjustment in the budget, which is reflected in the draft decision. Next, please. The third request is for Abu Mena, a site inscribed on the list of World Heritage in danger since 2001. The request foresees a training program in the field of conservation to improve the skills of Abu Mena's staff and enable them to set up the conservation plan on the ground. This request is in direct response to the repeated decisions of the World Heritage Committee and is therefore recommended for approval. Next, please. The fourth request aims to support condition assessment of shipwrecks within the Bikini Atoll nuclear test site during the 2023 dive season. The project would start implementing a set of activities that are needed to protect and manage the property in accordance with requests made by the World Heritage Committee at the time of inscription in 2010. This request is therefore recommended for approval. The amount recommended by the panel is a bit lower than the amount requested, because the panel considered that the amounts dedicated to diving equipment could be removed and that marine park fees should be waived. Next, please. The fifth request aims to support conservation activities at a Hindu building within the World Heritage Site of Polonnaruwa Ancient City. The project aims at strengthening the foundation to ensure safety of the building and at reassembling the collapsed stone blocks. This request is therefore recommended for approval. Next, please. The sixth and last request relates to the proper documentation of monuments at the World Heritage Property of National History Park, Citadel Sanssouci, Ramières, and foresees also the preparation of a risk preparedness plan for the main monuments that is aimed first at staff and experts and secondly at local communities. This request is therefore recommended for approval, noting that at the time of the implementation of the activity, the use of international assistance funds should focus primarily on the attributes of the outstanding universal value. Next, please. The second part of the document provides a brief overview of international assistance requests approved in 2020-2021. The main figures are shown on the screen. As you can see, Africa and the LDCs are the main beneficiaries of international assistance under the World Heritage Fund. Next, please. Part 3 provides an update of the status of the 2022-2023 budget for international assistance as of 15 June 2023. As you can see on the screen, almost all the funds have been used or have been already earmarked for approvals, including for the possible approvals to be decided by the committee in a few minutes. Therefore, there is currently funding left only under natural heritage, where we usually receive a lower number of requests than for cultural heritage. Next, please. In February of 2022, a review of all the applications and final reports of the completed projects supported by international assistance from 2016 to 2021 was undertaken, focusing on conservation and management assistance and emergency assistance. For each project, a short write-up captured the key impact and contribution towards sustainable development, including any innovative strategies or aspects. The full report is available on the International Assistance webpage. Some of the key findings are shown on the screen. Many projects identify new models of governance related to heritage management and set a framework which lay the grounds for sustainable development activities. The role of the projects in capacity building at various levels also provides a potential tool to formalize the integration of the SDGs in World Heritage Management. Next slide, please. Mr. Chairperson, thank you very much. Just to recall that the draft decision can be found on page 29 of the English version and page 30 of the French version of the document at WHC/23/45com/14. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much, dear Deputy Director. So I'd like to ask if there are any comments concerning this agenda item. I will start with India.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. India is happy to note the presentation made by the Deputy Director of the World Heritage Center regarding international assistance. We are happy to note that Africa and the LDCs form a majority of these beneficiaries of the World Heritage Fund. We are happy to approve $85,000 for Côte d'Ivoire. Happy to note that Ghana will be supported by $43,678. We are pleased to also note that Egypt will be supported with $56,504. Marshall Islands in the Asia Pacific will be supported by $70,000. Our neighborhood Sri Lanka will be supported by $47,500, and Haiti will be supported by $33,325. We would like to urge the World Heritage Committee to explore new and innovative ways to increase the funding for the World Heritage Fund. It is an important fund that can be channelized to fund more projects across the world. And going forward, we look forward to some more suggestions, more contributions, and more innovative ways to fund this WH funding. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Indeed, it's a very critical issue. Are there any additional interventions or questions? It seems Sultan Oman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at some of the requests. Some of the requests, they have evaluation reporting. They request some budget, some of them with zero budget. Does that mean the request coming, the state party is participating with some money for the evaluation and reporting? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I will pass it back to the Deputy Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and thank you to the distinguished delegate of Oman. Yes, the response is yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much. So I see no more questions. And I therefore invite you, dear colleagues, to adopt the draft decision 45-14. But before doing so, I'd like to ask Rapporteur if she has received any amendment on the draft decision proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have received no amendment for the draft decision 45-14.
Thank you very much. And if there are no objections or comments, I therefore declare draft decision 45-14 adopted. So, dear colleagues, we now have to consider our agenda item 11, which concerns the follow-up to recommendations of evaluations and audit on working methods. The relevant document for this item is document 45.com-11.rev. This report spans over a 2-year period. As you will remember, at its extended 44th session in 2021, the committee decided to extend the mandate of the established ad hoc working group into subgroups. I'm pleased to give the floor to the chairpersons of the 2 subgroups of the ad hoc working group, Ms. Yara Al-Ghafri, Oman, chairperson of subgroup 1, and Ms. Chiara Franco, Italy, chairperson of subgroup 2, who will report to the distinguished committee of the work of the group. Mr. Al-Ghafri, may you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Excellencies, dear colleagues, through its decision 44-11, the World Heritage Committee extended the mandate of the ad hoc working group, composed of the members of the committee and up to 2 non-members per electoral group. The group was divided into 2 subgroups with specific mandates, and subgroup 1 was mandated to analyze and propose sustainable and innovative solutions, including the cost-sharing mechanism described in paragraph 168 bis of the operational guidelines, for financing the nomination process, including the preliminary assessment, with the aim to improve transparency, cost efficiency, and identify possible synergies, overlaps, and potential cost-saving measures to be taken into account in the reformed evaluation cycle. Subgroup 1 met online on 8 occasions in 2022 and 2023. It was chaired in 2022 by Ms. Zoya Kriskaya from the Russian Federation, and in 2003 by myself. A drafting group led by Ms. Christine Carlson from Norway was created and met online on May 9, 2023 to draft the recommendations, which were then endorsed by the subgroup on June 16, 2023. During the meetings, it was underlined on numerous occasions that the main objective of the preliminary assessment was to improve the nomination process by facilitating the preparation of the nomination dossier, to decrease the costs of nominations for member states, and to reduce the imbalance of the list. The estimated cost of the PA was presented and discussed, based on the analysis made by the advisory bodies, and which would amount to $1,181,220 for 2 years. During the meetings, the group examined several presentations related to the financial situation of the World Heritage Center, including the iOS performance audit of the UNESCO World Heritage Center, the financial report of the World Heritage Center 2020 2021, an analysis of funding under the World Heritage Fund, regular budget and extra budgetary funds, and a presentation on various budget lines of the World Heritage Fund, as well as on the different existing reserves under the fund. Several funding scenarios of the PA were presented by the World Heritage Center. One, to reduce the number of files reviewed per year. 2, to use the sub-account for the evaluation of nominations. And 3, to decrease budget lines for advisory services. There was a consensus among the group not to reduce the number of files nor decrease budget lines, particularly those pertaining to international assistance and capacity building. The group mainly discussed and examined voluntary funding measures, although one state party, referring to the long-lasting financial difficulties faced by the Convention, stressed the need to open a fundamental discussion on how to increase assessed contributions. Some states parties made some funding proposals, such as leveraging the private sector. One state party submitted the idea of making the PA voluntary or introducing a mechanism that allows the states parties to nominate more than one dossier per year at a substantially higher cost, which could then be diverted into the World Heritage Fund to either subsidize the nominations of other countries or improve capacity building in those countries. The group also recalled the different options presented in the resolution WHC 19GA8, paragraph 7, which recommended to states parties to make unrestricted supplementary voluntary contributions and discussed the importance of reiterating the call to states parties to voluntarily double their assessed contributions and to contribute to the sub-account on the evaluation of nominations based on the cost-sharing mechanism, as well as to settle any pending assessed contributions. This formed the basis for recommendations 1 and 2. The group also engaged in several discussions with BSP, the Bureau of Strategic Planning, on potential ways to leverage extra budgetary financial resources. While acknowledging the difficulty in raising contributions for statutory processes, BSP recognized the potential of leveraging funds for the World Heritage Convention. One proposal was to potentially explore, if funds are made available, a membership scheme that would encourage World Heritage sites to contribute voluntarily to the World Heritage Fund. Discussion was also undertaken with regards to organizing a partners forum. In this respect, the group agreed to recommend to the World Heritage Committee to collaborate with the Center to collaborate with the Bureau of Strategic Planning on ways to raise extra budgetary funding for the World Heritage Convention, including for the nomination process, and to look into ways to consider the possibility of organizing a partners forum annually in dialogue with states parties, and to ensure appropriate follow-up and implementation of the outcomes. This formed the basis for recommendations 3 and 4. The group also decided to recommend to use up to 100% of the amount in the sub-account on evaluations of nominations to contribute to the financing of the nomination process, particularly the preliminary assessment, as from September 2023, and to complement, if necessary, the financing needs of the World Heritage Center related to the preliminary assessment with funds from the operating reserve, as other reserves are restricted. This formed the basis for recommendations 5 and 6. As these options may not necessarily constitute stable and sustainable sources of funding in the long term, the group decided to recommend continuing discussions in view of finding sustainable solutions for financing the nomination process, including the preliminary assessment, in the framework of the next ad hoc working group to be established for 23-24. This formed the basis for recommendation 7. Allow me to conclude by thanking the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as the host country of the World Heritage Committee for trusting me in chairing this subgroup, and Ms. Chiara Franco from Italy, chairperson of Subgroup 2, for her fruitful cooperation. I also thank all the members of Subgroup 1, the advisory bodies, as well as BSP and the World Heritage Center team for their invaluable input and support. Thank you for your attention.
Shukran jazilan, Yara Al-Ghafri. Ms. Franco, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Excellencies, dear colleagues, the mandate that was given to Subgroup 2 can be resumed into 3 main subjects. 1, the long-term financial sustainability of the Convention. 2, the mapping of current and potential additional advisory services providers with a view to improving geographical balance. And 3, the feasible procedures related to Article 11.3 of the Convention. For what concerns the issue of long-term financial sustainability, the states parties had to acknowledge that notwithstanding increasing challenges facing the Convention, there is a growing difficulty to adequately finance all necessary activities. Therefore, the working group examined several scenarios for possible cost savings, starting from the options that had already been presented by the Secretariat over the last few years, including the reduction of the annual limit of nominations that can be evaluated, the reduction of state of conservation reports to be examined every year, and the reduction of the frequency of the meetings of the World Heritage Committee. However, none of these possible scenarios was agreed upon by the working group. Indeed, all different scenarios examined were considered either not very effective in terms of savings or, in any case, not desirable for the purposes of the Convention. Regarding the second issue within the mandate of the working group, it was acknowledged with conviction that there is a growing need for improved geographical balance in the Convention, which was deemed as a crucial and priority issue for the credibility of the Convention itself. The advisory bodies shared with the working group detailed information and statistics on their geographical diversity and on their ongoing efforts to tackle the issue of geographical balance of the World Heritage List. Some reforms that have already been implemented by the advisory bodies with the objective of improving geographical balance were commended by the working group, with reference in particular to the change in composition of ICOMOS panels, replacing a system in which the composition of the panels reflected the geographical repartition of nominations submitted, with a system in which all regions of the world are equally represented. Additional information can be found in Annex C of the document, and this reform has already been put in place in the 2022-2023 cycle of evaluation. Further proposals by the advisory bodies meant to improve geographical representation were also discussed, and additional changes and improvements in the procedures were indeed encouraged in the recommendations. Above all, there was a consensus on the need of enhancing capacity building activities, while also recognizing that this would require additional funding. It was therefore recommended that the committee calls upon state parties to contribute to the World Heritage Fund through supplementary voluntary contributions for the financing of capacity building activities. The mandate of the subgroup also included the possibility of exploring the criteria and governance under which the committee may cooperate with international and non-governmental organizations in accordance with Articles 13.7 and 14.2 of the Convention, as well as paragraph 38 of the operational guidelines. In this context, a preliminary mapping of current and potential additional advisory services providers was presented by the Secretariat in accordance with the mandate of the working group. Such preliminary mapping included 271 entities. It was agreed that should the committee decide in the future to work with additional services providers, others than the advisory bodies which are mentioned in the Convention, further debate would be needed as for the selection criteria to be used to choose such services providers, as well as regarding the type of services that these organizations could provide. Mr. Chairperson, the mandate of the working group included also the dialogue regarding Article 11.3 of the Convention, meaning the possibility of introducing new procedures to face possible nominations in contested territories. The debate in this case also did not lead to a definitive conclusion. The working group finally considered a proposal meant to strengthen the dialogue between state parties, the World Heritage Center, and the advisory bodies with reference to the reactive monitoring process. While the proposal received broad support within the working group, a consensus could not be reached on whether the issue fell within the actual mandate of the working group itself. Therefore, no specific recommendation to the committee was adopted in this regard. As you know, this issue has then been discussed in this committee under item 7. Excellencies, dear colleagues, in such a limited number of meetings, the working group could not find concrete solutions to enormous and essential challenges for the future of the Convention in the aftermath of its 50th anniversary. Nevertheless, the discussions engaged were extremely encouraging as for the willingness and commitment of the states parties for possible reforms in order to make the Convention increasingly efficient and up-to-date. This is also why it was recommended that the mandate of the working group be extended, including again most of the issues that were already dealt with during this year's meetings, with the wish that new concrete, innovative and perhaps creative solutions be found as soon as possible. Mr. Chairperson, allow me to sincerely thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as the host country of the 45th extended session for trusting me in chairing this subgroup, as well as the advisory bodies for the contributions to the discussion, and the chairperson of subgroup 2, Mrs. Yara Ghaffri, for the excellent cooperation. Of course, I also thank all the participants to the subgroup, and finally, the work of the working group would not have been possible without the constant and precious support of the Secretariat, which I also want to thank once again. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much. I would like to see if there are any comments from the floor regarding this item. Sultanate Oman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would like to thank both presenters for this excellent report and efforts. I have two comments. I mean, Yara, you mentioned about fundraising for the nomination, which is, I think, one of essential efforts at UNESCO. We need to explore this idea more and to see how can we fundraise either both the committee in addition to the World Heritage Center in cooperation. I think this is very important to fundraise, especially for those countries in need, to fundraise for the nomination. We started, I mean, there are efforts in the World Heritage Center for the capacity building to build the file, but maybe we want to enlarge that a little bit, even to include the nomination. This is one point. The second point is mentioned by the second presenter, and that is service provider, which is and the criteria how to enlarge the advisory bodies. The idea, if we remember when I mentioned in one of my discussion, it is about capacity building to enlarge the advisory body themselves, where we need to have the second line, the third line are prepared to replace and to assist the advisory body on this. So instead of looking for service providers, I think it's very important that the advisory body themselves, I mean, our advisory body now, IUCN, ICROM, and ECOMOS, themselves, they need to enlarge their capacity by having more people queuing in line 2, line 3. They are to be trained and to be giving some services to help them in order to develop their professionalism. This is how I see it instead of having service provider. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me start by conveying Nigerians' appreciation to the ad hoc working group for their efforts, which produced a recommendation by 2 subgroups submitted in the document we are presently considering. We note the very useful proposal on financing on the nomination process, including the preliminary assessment as well as those on financial stability, advisory services, and dialogue on Article 11.3. The recommendation offers ways forward and also window for further discussion to improve our working methods. At the same time, we are conscious of the continued heavy budget constraint of the World Heritage Fund and the need for an effective management of increasing size of the list and the call for the more balanced World Heritage list by reducing the gap in regional representation. However, these and a few issues are still lingering. They merit greater attention, perhaps through a broader participation and a general contribution that will enhance equity. While we received the report of the ad hoc working group with immense thanks, Nigeria is of the opinion that this working group could be enlarged and strengthened with wider participation for more diverse viewpoints in a spirit of continued quest for effective solution. We therefore wish to join the United Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as a co-sponsor of the amendments to the draft decision on this item. In particular, we support the creation of an open-ended working group that will assume, among other responsibilities, the mandates of the ad hoc working group. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Egypt.
Thank you, Chair. Egypt would like to express its sincere appreciation for the dedicated efforts of the ad hoc working group since the adoption of Decision 44-COM/11. The work accomplished thus far is truly commendable and would certainly have not been possible without the cooperation and support of the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies. While we acknowledge the notable progress made in certain domains, particularly those related to the reformed evaluation cycle, we are also keenly aware that there are areas that require further deliberations and, more importantly, tangible outcomes. It is our collective responsibility to address these critical issues with the utmost diligence and unwavering commitment. In this regard, we firmly support the amendment proposed for the establishment of an open-ended working group in lieu of the current ad hoc working group. We firmly believe that this transition to an open-ended working group would facilitate more inclusive discussions, thereby allowing far broader range of perspectives and expertise to be considered. Chair, we must emphasize the significance of the mandates proposed for this open-ended working group. The persistent geographical imbalance of the World Heritage List remains a considerable shortcoming in the implementation of this convention. It is regrettable that in this session, held shortly after the 50th anniversary of the convention, we find ourselves still grappling with this issue, despite the adoption of the global strategy in 1994 and numerous, if not countless, decisions. Some regions, notably the Arab and the African regions, continue to be severely underrepresented. This underrepresentation is tied to deficiencies in addressing both the technical and financial needs related to the convention. It is our collective duty to rectify this imbalance and work towards a more equitable representation. Based on above, Mr. Chair, we fully support the amendment presented by Saudi Arabia. I thank you.
Thank you very much. South Africa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The South African delegation wishes to thank the Secretariat for providing a comprehensive report on the outcomes and recommendations of the ad hoc working group. We know that the two subgroups, they held many meetings over the past 2 years in an attempt to find sustainable solutions for the various issues that they were tasked with to discuss. Mr. Chair, we are pleased with the progress made in Subgroup 1 in finding a solution to financing the nomination process, including the preliminary assessment, whilst recognizing at the same time that other funding proposals will still need to be found. With regards to Subgroup 2, Mr. Chair, we are in support of the amendment proposed by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the draft decision that the mandate of the ad hoc working group be transferred into an open-ended working group to continue to delve deeper into the current imbalances on the World Heritage List, the need for further capacity building initiatives, as well as finding additional financial solutions for the nomination process. We believe that whilst the Center, the advisory bodies and the African World Heritage Fund are working tirelessly to address these issues on behalf of the African continent. This open-ended working group will provide another opportunity for state parties to propose innovative solutions to these challenges currently facing the implementation of the convention. In this regard, we have noted the report and recommendation 12 by the ad hoc working group of subgroup 2 that the possibility of using additional service providers for the activities carried out within the convention should be further debated. As the discussions on this issue have not been exhausted, we recommend that we retain the original text in paragraph 7C within the DR, which refers to exploring the possibility of using additional service providers in order for the new open-ended working group to discuss this matter further. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, South Africa is ready to participate actively in the open-ended working group to contribute to the deliberations of the group. I thank you.
Thank you very much, St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just I want to thank Ms. Al-Ghafri and Ms. Franco for leading the two subgroups. It was a difficult exercise, but we have reached some interesting recommendations, maybe to be discussed later, but we, of course, I would like to make echo to what has been said by my colleague from Egypt about the balanced and credible list of the World Heritage List. And I would like also to thank Saudi Arabia for proposing a broader working group to think in depth on this process, on these problems. And of course, we support the amendments, and we have just slight amendments to be presented later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. India?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for giving India the floor. We would also like to thank the chairs of the two subgroups for their exhaustive presentations. Well, this has indeed given us a food for thought. I think we will cut our discussion short, but in the end, we would like to say that we would also align with the amendments that have been proposed by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But perhaps at a later stage, we would like to discuss the subgroup 1 and subgroup 2 initiatives in greater detail later on. Thank you, Chair.
Indeed, thank you so much. Zambia?
Thank you very much, Chair. The State Party of Zambia takes note and appreciates the warm welcome and hospitality extended to the delegates of this extraordinary committee session. We also are alive to the fact that Africa and indeed Zambia have for some time been underrepresented in terms of the sites inscribed on the World Heritage List and overrepresented on the endangered list. This is not healthy for the convention from the pedestal of Africa, Arab, and Latin America. This underrepresentation of sites on the World Heritage List, despite the rich cultural diversity, geodiversity, and biodiversity in Africa, is not only a source of concern, but demotivating. This is largely due to the lack or scarcity of human, logistical, and technical capacities. Mr. Chairman, the proposal by Saudi Arabia is coming at the time when states parties such as my own are struggling to nominate and have sites inscribed on the prestigious list, this prestigious list. As the State Party of Zambia, we see light at the end of the tunnel if this amendment by Saudi Arabia is adopted. Mr. Chairman, further, I would like to, as the State Party of Zambia, propose that given the leadership that has been demonstrated by the hospitable Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, be extended further by allowing them to take us through this new initiative, if adopted, considering that they are also already championing the cause for a balanced World Heritage listing. You know, it is said that if you want to become, you must be seen to be in the process of becoming. And already Saudi Arabia has shown that they are already becoming and they're in the process of becoming. Mr. Chairman, thus Zambia is further proposing that the inclusion of Saudi Arabia in the draft amendment to lead the open-ended working group. I submit.
Thank you very much. Dawlat Qatar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The State of Qatar would like to express my appreciation to the ad hoc working group for their dedicated efforts, and we acknowledge the budgetary limitations of the World Heritage Fund, as well as the need for efficient and effective management to expand the scope of the list and address the call for a more balanced World Heritage List. Qatar is also aware of the comprehensive global strategy adopted by the World Heritage Committee at its 18th session, which provides a broader framework for analyzing and implementing a program to reduce the gap in the regional representation and achieve a balanced and credible World Heritage List. Mr. Chair, We believe that creating an open-ended working group of states parties is a worthwhile endeavor. The establishment of such a group will enable all state parties to engage in constructive discussions which are essential for following reasons. First, reducing the gap in the representation of the state parties on the World Heritage List. And second, enhancing the balance of this list. And thirdly, finding a sustainable solutions to the financial requirements of the nomination process. Mr. Chair, the State of Qatar advises that this open-ended working group should collaborate closely with the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies. Furthermore, it should be responsible for submitting a report with its recommendation during the upcoming 46th session of this committee. Mr. Chair, the State of Qatar fully supports the amendment proposed by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Belgica?
Thank you, Chair. Belgium really enjoyed the constructive dialogue we had in the working groups. We'd like to thank both chairs and also the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for submitting the amendment to item 11 that we have before us now. And we wholeheartedly agree that we need an open mind and creativity to look at the challenges the Convention is facing. These challenges are manifold and complex. And what is mentioned in sub-paras A, B, and C under item para 7 is absolutely pertinent and urgent. But in the longer term, we also need to look at things such as governance arrangements, the frequency and length of committee meetings, timelines and methods for the evaluation process, the implementation of upstream assistance, and most importantly, the systematic support for the conservation of World Heritage properties. Chair, we believe that the open-ended working group that is created can also be the creative forum for the 195 state parties, advisory bodies, secretariat, and maybe even others to have a fundamental reflection on the operation of the Convention. We really need this discussion. We have long contemplated whether this should be a committee-led initiative or rather something to be organized by the General Assembly. But considering the open character of the working group that is established here, if we follow the amendments submitted by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we believe this could work. But we would like to ask the Secretary to ensure that the General Assembly is involved, or at the very least kept informed as well. So, Chair, Belgium will propose an additional sub-para D to the revised para 7 that introduces the idea of starting a fundamental reflection on the operation of the Convention. But considering the complexity and multifaceted character of topics to be discussed, we propose that the working group will initially focus on defining the mandate and working methods for this fundamental reflection. This is what we foresee for the next couple of months. And then, based on the foundations that are laid by mid-2024, the actual fundamental reflection could be launched at next year's committee session, following, of course, the approval of the mandate and the working methods as suggested by the open-ended working group. Again, we believe that these discussions will take some time, and we should give it time. Maybe we could look at the 50th anniversary of the first meeting of the committee in 2028 to present the conclusions of this fundamental reflection. Chair, Belgium will also, in addition to this para B, suggest a few technical additions to para 3 for the sake of completeness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greece?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would like to thank the Member States that proposed amendments of the draft decision 45-11, which pertains to central issues and procedures for the implementation of the Convention. Our delegation has actively participated in the discussions of the ad hoc working group, and we would like to commend the work and progress made in the context of the two subgroups meetings, during which a very constructive dialogue has been developed and a fruitful exchange of views and ideas has taken place. We therefore warmly welcome the proposal for the establishment of an open-ended working group to continue this debate, taking into consideration the progress made so far. Therefore, our delegation would like to support the amendments proposed by Saudi Arabia, since they cover in a complete way the considerations that have been highlighted in the context of this agenda item, inter alia budgetary constraints, and the need for the establishment of a credible, balanced, and representative World Heritage List. Finally, we would like to express our readiness to participate actively in the works of the proposed open-ended working group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Japan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. First of all, I would like to express our appreciation to the the chairpersons and the members of the working group for their work under difficult circumstances. Secondly, we would like to co-author the amendments suggesting to create an open-ended working group. And finally, I would like to support Zambia's suggestion that Saudi Arabia should take a lead in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. We would like to express our gratitude to both chairpersons of the ad hoc group for their efforts in conducting the discussion on this crucial matter. And we support the proposal of Saudi Arabia to continue dialogue within the broader open-ended group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Italy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Very briefly, just to support the proposal by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the creation of an open-ended working group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mexico?
Gracias, señor presidente. Primero que nada, queremos agradecer el trabajo de quienes presidieron estos grupos de trabajo ad hoc. No tenían un mandato fácil y sabemos que se reunieron, todas estas reuniones se desarrollaron en medio de situaciones complicadas y por eso reconocemos enormemente este trabajo de orientación y guía durante las sesiones. En ese sentido, damos la bienvenida a la propuesta de Arabia Saudita de hacer un grupo de composición abierta y nos gustaría que en ese grupo de composición abierta se tome en consideración ya el resultado o las recomendaciones que se han discutido antes durante los grupos de trabajo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Ethiopia?
Thank you, Chair. Hoping that the open-ended working group to be established will come up with a practical mechanism of helping those countries that are underrepresented, not only in Africa, but elsewhere in the world. We support the amendment by Saudi Arabia, and then we share the suggestions made by the state parties of Zambia and Japan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Argentina?
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Bueno, queremos también apoyar la enmienda que ha propuesto Arabia Saudita.
Thank you very much. India?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to echo what the delegate of Belgium has said, that we hope that this open-ended working group will go into the fundamentals of the working of the convention and the next. How do we see this convention moving forward? It's already a 50-year-old convention. We feel it has reached an inflection point. At this point, what are the plans? What is our future trajectory to cover the demands of a growing global South? As the per capita incomes of Asian countries, African countries, SIDS, and Latin American countries grow, the demand also increases from Asia Pacific, from Africa and other parts of the world to see more and more of their properties listed on the World Heritage List. But listing is not the only criteria. The World Heritage Convention deals with the fundamentals of preservation and conservationists. How do we rope in the advisory bodies? How do we seek to increase funding for the advisory bodies? How do we seek to increase funding for the World Heritage Center so that more human resources are available to meet these increasing demands that are placed on it? And I will echo what the Ambassador of Japan has said, that we welcome the amendments presented by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we would like them to chair it and take lead in this. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you very much. Sultanate Oman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was confused when I started my intervention. I thought we are going to come to the resolution or the amendment later on. Therefore, I would like to support strongly the amendment provided by Saudi Arabia and for the chairing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bulgaria?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Bulgaria would like to commend the work of the two subgroups and their chairpersons, and we would like also to support the proposals by Saudi Arabia to establish an open-ended working group, and we echo the proposal by Zambia, Japan, and India. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mali?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Mali souscrit à l'amendement apporté au projet de décision émanant de l'Arabie saoudite. Naturellement, nous nous joignons à nos préopinants pour adresser nos chaleureuses félicitations aux deux présidentes de nos groupes de travail ainsi qu'à chaque membre qui ont collaboré à leur côté. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Egypt.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس، ومعذرة لطلب الكلمة مرة ثانية، أود فقط أن أضم صوت مصر إلى الأصوات المطالبة بتولي المملكة العربية السعودية رئاسة المجموعة. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا. And as our session came to an end, قطر.
اسمح لي سيد الرئيس على أخذ الكلمة مرة أخرى. قطر تؤيد رئاسة المملكة العربية السعودية لهذه المجموعة، وشكرا.
شكرا جزيلا. تايلاند.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very quick. First of all, thank you, the ad hoc working groups, for their good work, and would like to support Saudi Arabia's amendment to establish the open-end working groups on this to take our work forward, and also support the proposal by Japan, India, Zambia for Saudi Arabia to take the lead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So since our session came to an end, and please note that as we didn't manage to examine all the agenda items that were on our timetable for today, we will reconvene tomorrow afternoon, Friday, 22nd of September, to examine the following item: resume the discussion and adoption of item 11 on outcomes of the ad hoc working group, 12 on revision of the operational guidelines, 15 on budget of the World Heritage Fund. The next Bureau meeting would therefore be tomorrow from 2:30 to 3. All other items, 16, 17, and 18, 19, and 20 will be examined on Sunday morning, 24th of September. I would like to pass the floor to the Director General of the World Heritage Center for general announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. This is just to reconfirm what has been said by my colleague in her presentation, in ending her presentation on the periodic reporting results for the Asia and the Pacific. This is just to tell you that at 6:30 there will be a side event on the results, a specific side event on the results of the periodic reporting, so organized by the Secretariat. So you are all invited. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So also I would like to extend the invitation on behalf of the Saudi National Commission about the invitation for tomorrow about the closing event, which will take place at Prince Noura University, 8 p.m. It's a musical ceremony, so I urge you please to attend and also confirm your attendance to the email sent to you earlier. The buses will leave from the entrance at 6 p.m. So please confirm your attendance to this. And then see you tomorrow afternoon.